Hi there, YouTube. Welcome to Stratosphere Studio. Let's bring our friends in over on Twitch here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Studio. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is Monday, the 29th of January of 2024. 2024. You heard me correctly. Seems like we should be further along by now, but that's kind of a common theme around here. Hope everybody's doing well. It's good to be back. And let's see what we got here. A couple things. Let's get everything a little more organized. So anyway, here we are. The first thing that I remembered from Thursday is, and it might be in the questions, which we'll get to in a bit. But I wanted to talk just briefly about this Starfield game. This is our entertainment night. But first of all, a couple things. I think we missed last Monday's show, but certainly I think since we had the last Stratosphere Studio show. My little sad to say, my friend Gary Graham died, who was played the Vulcan ambassador on Star Trek Enterprise, and was in it wasn't V for Vengeance, Alien Nation. He's just a terrific guy, most laid back guy you could possibly imagine, and Axonar, and I didn't know him like super well, but when I saw him, he was always just the most openly friendly, laid back, nice guy, great musician on top of it. And got the news about that a little over a week ago now or something, and that one hurt quite a lot. I think it was relatively sudden. I think it was some kind of heart trouble or something, but he's just a terrific guy, and honestly, I think of all the people I've gotten to know, I can't think of anybody who's honestly most more laid back, friendly, genuine, warm, and not unaware, I guess, of his fame, but just certainly, just like you're just kind of guy you just walk up to and start talking to, and we expect. Jeremy texted me with the news the day it happened, and texted him back. I said, all things considered, 15 years since we've been doing the Friends of Abe thing. It's really not too bad. Ed Ames, I knew and liked very much. He died earlier this year, or maybe end of last year, in 2023. But all things considered, 15 years, they're pretty good. And I was trying to think if there's anybody else, kind of like major, and it took me almost a minute before I realized Andrew Breitbart, and I think that's probably because it was very nearly 12 years ago as we record this. He died on the end of February, died on leap year day, so February 29th in 2012. Other than that, not really too bad. But I mentioned to Jeremy, I don't like the trend line. I don't like where this is going. We'll just get the heavy stuff out of the way, then we can move on. He played the Vulcan ambassador on the later episode on Enterprise and stuff. If you ever saw Star Trek Axonar, he's got a large role in that pilot. Just a cool guy. And then also related to sort of entertainment stuff, kind of a downer, but there you go. I saw something, I guess about 3 or 4 days ago, that was just really tough. So most of you probably know from Stratosphere Lounge shows and so on that my mom died about a year ago, a little more, I think. She was listed as a COVID death, but I know this sounds rather coarse, but best way to describe it is COVID didn't kill her, it just kind of finished her off. But she'd been suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia for many, many years. And the best thing I ever heard about that was that somebody said, the problem with Alzheimer's and dementia is it leaves you grieving for people who are still alive. That's exactly correct. So that was a while ago, and and it's not like it was a surprise. The genuinely worst thing about this nightmare of a disease is that when I did get the news, she developed COVID symptoms, and then the next day she was sick, and the day after that she was gone. She was 93, and she was declining consistently for many years. But it's a hard thing to just come out and say, but the truth of it is that with Alzheimer's and dementia, it's not only do you grieve somebody who's still alive, it's you're actually relieved, to hear that that this thing has run its course. And so I just happened to stumble upon a really excellent YouTube video, not produced by anybody major, just really excellent user-generated content. That's why I watch nothing but YouTube now. About the whole thing about Alzheimer's and dementia and what it consists of, and the medical symptoms and all the rest of it, and so on. But he mentioned something that I'd never heard of before, and it's for people who don't have relatives with this. It's probably just going to have sort of an academic sort of a interest. But if you know somebody or knew somebody who suffered from this, it just kick you in the teeth, because it's so brilliant. I have seen things that escaped. I just cut a little bit of that. Hang on a second. My wife's been driving. Just want to make sure she's okay. Hang on one sec. So every now and then, Natasha goes someplace new on the freeways. And I kind of, if it's a real tough one, like she had to go down to Irvine, I usually go the night before with her, just drive down with her and just sort of co-pilot the way in and out. But she just got back home, and a little tricky one, so she's just getting more and more confident every day, so that's great. Anyway, here's what it was about this. This video that I saw about Alzheimer's referenced something that was just so amazing. So if we're seeing a bunch of people in the comments saying that they've got somebody or know somebody who went through this. I saw it, and I kind of needed to see it. But you should consider it. So here's what inside the thing about Alzheimer's was a reference to something that was made several years ago, and it's an audio recording. And it's called Everything at the End of Time, I think is the name. And it is a 6-hour recording, 6 one-hour segments. And Alzheimer's is broken down into 6 different stages. And each one of these 1-hour tracks represents that stage of Alzheimer's. And so the first stage is just mild forgetfulness, and so the whole first segment is nothing but just hearing tunes from the 30s, just kind of the stuff you might hear on, like in The Shining in the background, that kind of, 1930s, 20s sort of, old-time music kind of thing that you would expect that your parents, your grandparents might have listened to. So you listen to all of it, and you get a sense for all of these tunes, and it's relatively boring, really. But if you really want to do it, you can fast forward through it. But to really get the sense of it, you got to do the whole thing. So that's stage 1, Alzheimer's. Then stage 2. Everybody's saying it's a bad internet connection. I don't know what to say about that. I can't do much about it. It's fine on this end. It's Twitch. So sorry about that. It might be good on YouTube if you're having problems on Twitch. All right, so here's the thing. So the second hour is the same music, but it represents the perception of somebody with stage 2 Alzheimer's. And so parts of it are sped up. Mostly it's slowed down. And there's just subtle distortions in there, and there's a little bit more static. And and there are times when the song will just kind of dip out like you've forgotten what the lyrics are. And then you get into stage 3 and it gets more and more distorted. By the time you get to stage 4, you're just hearing this kind of sound, and then you'll hear echoes like, and it's the same tunes you heard on side 1, but it's more and more distorted. And then stage 5 is very, very just erratic sounds. And then when you finally get to stage 6, which is the terminal stage of Alzheimer's, it's essentially just there's something that I didn't know about. I'm probably glad I didn't know about it. But apparently it's by no means universal, but it has happened often enough that there's some, no, not tinnitus I'm talking about. For those of you coming in late, there's a remarkable audio piece that's been, I'm fine, remarkable audio piece that's been done a while ago called Everywhere at the End of Time, or Everything at the End of Time. And it's 6 hours showing you what, just by listening, what Alzheimer's does to your brain. And so by the time you get to the last one, it's just hums. There's no message there. There's no thought. There's no structure. You're just nothing. But in apparently, again, I didn't know this. There's something that happens relatively frequently called terminal lucidity. And apparently, in some cases, a few days before the person actually dies, as the brain is essentially just shutting down, there are, in some cases, moments of genuine lucidity where the person comes back to some degree. And if you're not prepared for it, it's, according to this video I saw, is it's just heartbreaking because you think, my God, they're recovering. They're not recovering. They're just shutting down. But as they shut down, there is relatively frequently this thing called terminal lucidity, where they come back long enough to be able to recognize people again and stuff. And at the end of this album, in phase 6, it's just nothing but just, and then towards the end of this thing, it's and you start to get the signal back, and then the terminal lucidity just silence. So it's powerful. I'm really glad I did it. It wasn't fun to listen to, but I'm glad I did it. And if you have relatives who are currently going through this nightmare, I would recommend it to you only because it gives you a much better idea of what's actually going on, internally. One of the comments below one of these things was that it's a clinical worker who had gotten some training back when he started working with Alzheimer's patients, and Chase D said, "Yeah, Bill, it happened with my father. He had one last good day. I sure hope it didn't happen for my mom, because if she was in a COVID ward, and so, that." But in any event, one of the people said they'd gotten training, and that the training consisted of them wearing a pair of goggles that was purposely built so that it was just distorting everything, and they had to wear ear muffs, and they had to wear mitts, like oven mitts, and they're basically trying to show these people what the people they're caring for are dealing with. He said it was tremendously good training. This is the most horrifying thing I've ever heard, actually, in real life. Certainly in a while, anyway. This is the last of it, and then I'll move on. But in this documentary, it's not in Everything at the End of Time, but in the documentary, the guy is saying there's a case where a lot of times your body has essentially muscle memory that is a form of memory. And so one of the cases was a medical doctor, who spent 30 years in this hospital, and he spent 30 years in the hospital doing nothing but going up and down the corridors and checking on patients and reading their charts. So after this guy developed severe Alzheimer's, they kept him at the same hospital he worked at. And one of the things about having patients with Alzheimer's and dementia, this was the hardest thing for us certainly, was that they're constantly trying to escape, and they frequently do. You can't really chain people to a post. I mean, I suppose you could, but just don't. And once or twice a month or something, towards the end, my mom would just be gone, and we'd get a call from the police saying, "This person's got some ID," and it's like she's gone walking for 7 blocks or 20 or whatever. This doctor, came down with the terminal Alzheimer's, and he got out of his room and he did what he'd always done. He went up and down the hallways checking on charts. And this is apparently a true story, and he got to his own room. There was no patient in the bed, so he went in and read the chart. And he read the chart and he read his own name. And then below that, it said terminal Alzheimer's, and he was lucid enough to suddenly just realize what was going on. And he said, "Oh, Christ almighty, God help me," I heard that, I just thought, oh man, well, so, that was my mom. My uncle, 1 year younger, as I've said several times, he was taught gas turbine engineering and had all of the thousands of numbers memorized in his head. He was sharp as a tack till the day went, and he was, genetically identical to my mom. So a lot of my mom's decline was due to just plain isolation, and she would just watch, Fox News or something, and she just lost. It's like if you don't walk around, pretty soon you get to the point where you can't walk. And so this idea of keeping your mind busy really helps quite a lot. Every now and then I'll get stuck on this show, and I'll have moments where I remember somebody's face, or it happens to me all the time on this show. And I think, it's just like somebody major, like, it's Harrison Ford. So I thought, why can I not remember his name? Now, a lot of that is you're on live and you're kind of thinking, you got a lot of things to think about, and it's kind of the pressure of the thing. But I find that every now and then I'll do like weird things, like on purpose, intentionally. I'll say, okay, name the actors that were on Gilligan's Island, and who were the people on F Troop? Well, Larry Storch played Agar, and I know Ken Berry played the lieutenant, and the name of the guy who played the other guy, the sergeant, was Forrest something. I want to say something Forrest. I don't remember him too well. That kind of thing. I'll do the state capitals or something like that. So needless to say, I'm a little worried about it, but I'm not. Worried is too strong a word. I am alert to it, but it's a horrible thing. David Booty said my dad was fine 4 years ago, then COVID hit and he was stuck at home for more than a year. That's when he really started to decline. Yeah. Forrest Tucker. Okay, so half. I'm all right. Not too bad. Considering I didn't watch a whole lot of F Troop, I can live with that. I can sing the song from F Troop, so there you go. Anyway, the reason I brought this up is not because of continuing the ongoing downer here. It's just that if you want to just experience some genuine creative brilliance, you might want to search for Everything at the End of Time, and you can just skip through the 6 different chapters and hear a really profoundly deep audio representation of what happens to your mind as your mind starts to go. So some people, like Ronald Reagan, face this and they bow out with incredible grace. I think the most impressive thing Ronald Reagan did was when he was diagnosed, after he was out of office, diagnosed with it. And once it became clear to him what was happening, he sat down and wrote a letter to the American people thanking them for all of the opportunities that they had given him and the tremendous life he'd been given. And he basically said, I just want to write his thank you letter now while I still can. And that dignity and grace and courage, was just a tremendous monument to the guy. He said, I only wish I could spare Nancy the pain. Yeah. Now, of course, there's Joe Biden, who, all I have to say about Joe Biden, who is without question very, very compromised. The only thing I really have to say about Joe Biden is I don't think he was nearly as good a man as Ronald Reagan was. I know that to be true. But one of the strongest pieces of evidence for it is that there's no way that Nancy Reagan would have allowed Ronald Reagan to do what Joe Biden is not only allowing, but essentially forcing Joe Biden to do. It's elder abuse and all the rest. But if you listen to Biden even from like 2014, 15, it's a completely different guy. I believe he had a stroke. He's got that half smile, I'm pretty sure he had a major stroke. But whatever is the case, he's not the president. So there's that. And anyway, one of the comments we got on last year's Stress Free Lounge show, done with all this complete bummer. But again, one last time, I would highly recommend Everywhere at the End of Time. When we did the Stress Free Lounge show, I want to say it was Dave Big Booty mentioned it on Stress Free Lounge show. So here we are on the Stress Free Studio show, which is more about, pop culture, showbiz, games, and all that stuff. I just want to talk for a few minutes about Starfield because I've been following Star Citizen the way that I kind of would follow my parents once I'd moved out of the house. It's like I'll check in on them every now and then, hope they're okay, that kind of thing. And a year ago or so, maybe a little more, a little less than, Star Citizen looked like it was just absolutely flatlined. And then you started seeing the trailers and then the gameplay for this game called Starfield, which is put out by Bethesda, I want to say. And it looks so much better. It just looks so much better. The population, people were there, everything was working, and the ships look cooler, and the all of this stuff just looks so much cooler. And everybody who was watching Star Citizen, both the fans and the unfans of Chris Robertson's Star Citizen, were basically saying Starfield's just going to come and suck all the air out of this thing, and it's pretty much better looking and kind of cooler. And Starfield came and opened and went and didn't make a dent. Now, a lot of people are saying the game is buggy and nonsense and badly done, all that, and I believe all of that. But I think the reason that I was so, I don't want to say concerned because I don't really have a horse in this race anymore, but the reason I was convinced that Starfield was going to basically put Star Citizen out of business was because it just looked so good, and the cities had people in it, and everything was working. But it came and went, and the reason that I think that is when I realized it's a single player game, and I thought, well, no, a lot of times I played Star Citizen as single player, but that's really what's missing, is there's nothing there. Star Citizen, on the other hand, has, from their last convention, apparently gotten like a significant hit from the defibrillators, and looks like things are actually starting to move now, and because it did 4 years where it was doing nothing. But I was just really quite struck at how little of a splash this thing made. Because you could build your own ships, you modular design. I thought this is going to blow. It's going to blow Star Citizen out of the water, but it didn't. And there is no. Somebody mentioned, Steve mentioned story. There's no story in Star Citizen. Star Citizen has the worst lore, the worst world building I've ever seen. Chris Roberts he's just the most derivative guy ever, and there's really no story there. But what Star Citizen does have there is lots and lots and lots of actual people there. And that's what makes it alive in a way that Starfield just doesn't seem to be. So I have no desire to play Starfield or even see it. It looked like it was going to be great, but it just came and went. Star Citizen, on the other hand, after, like as I said, after several years of just being, on life support, it seemed to me, is now looking like, okay, they're actually starting to get their act together. It's been 15 years now or something like that, but, in any event, it'd certainly be the one to bet on right now. Roadrunner says, what about Mace Mattingly? There's nothing I would rather do than work on Mace Mattingly. But I'm still working on this Frank Luke thing, so I'll talk about that briefly, then we'll get to questions. So, straight enough, a week ago, I want to say, 2 weeks ago, we were doing the backstage show for members only, and Scott was talking about screenplays and talking about how all of the conventions that, are in traditional screenplays, like cut to, cut to, cut to. He said they're just gone. They just don't do that anymore. And it had been so long since I had written a screenplay. Last time I'd finished one was 2007, I want to say, for Aurora. And Big Bad Problems right around in there. And it used to be in the 30s and 40s and so on, and right up until probably about the 90s. You basically, on a screenplay, you would direct the movie in the script, the two-shot restaurant, the Bob and Betty are sitting opposite each other, close up Bob says his line, reversal to Betty says her line, tracking shot as the waiter brings the thing over. Now it's just like, I do use Final Draft. It's a great program. Now it's just like interior restaurant. Bob and Betty are sitting at the table. Bob's line, Betty's line, Bob's line, Betty's line. And it's just much, much cleaner. That actually is going to take a significant amount of the bloat out of this Frank Luke script, because I'm still doing the cut twos and kind of, trying to break it down into angles, and that's just me having out-of-date information. And I realized, you know what, man, I haven't read a modern screenplay in a long time. Why don't I just download one and read that? And so I did, and I thought, well, what's something that's like really, really recent? What's like the current state of the style? Because it's really most of a style issue. So I thought, okay, I'll download the script for Napoleon. That's a new movie, Ridley Scott, and lots and lots and lots of very complex things going on. So I want to see how they handled the description. So I downloaded the script for Napoleon, and the script is just garbage. I mean, it's so little there, and it's like it just. When I saw that it was coming, I'm a huge history buff, obviously, Napoleon and all the rest of it. I thought I'll probably be their opening night for this thing. And the more of it I saw, the more I felt like I don't really see much going on here. Joaquin Phoenix, arguably the best actor of our time, and he looks lost. Sadwings says, "Oh, you mean the new Josephine movie?" Yes, that's what it looks like. It looks like. I mean, this is probably the most epic story, Napoleon, and previous versions of Napoleon have been 6 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours, whatever. War and Peace, which is set in Napoleonic times, obviously, it's like a 8-hour version of that. And first of all, it's like you can't cover Napoleon in a movie. You need a trilogy at least. And not only that, but there was just very little Napoleon in Napoleon. And all of the stuff that was Napoleon was about Napoleon and Josephine. And it's not exactly a storybook romance. And he's not exactly, a silver-tongued devil. And I'm reading this script, and it's like, blah, 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 and then, blah, 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 and that's the Battle of Jena, a reference to the Battle of Jena. One scene from the Battle of, I guess it's Austerlitz, where they get out on the ice. Oh, he's a genius. He let him out onto the. It's like, you don't know. How do you make a movie about Napoleon without really getting into the battles? I mean, that's what the thing is all about. So that was not my first choice. Somebody mentioned my first choice. My first choice was to download Greatest Showman, but that's 5 years old. I'll go to that next. But there's definitely a lot. No one knows Kaladin. No one's ever done it before. it was just badly written, and not only that, but the script form was much simpler, much cleaner. I learned a bit from that, but it was so disjointed. It was so just almost like stream of consciousness. So I think there's probably a compromise. But I mean, this super out of control length Frank Luke script has got lots and lots and lots of scene descriptions and cut tos and stuff, and so I can trim. I'm in the process of trimming a significant amount of that bloat out of it. Still keeping the main stuff. Still too big a story, I think, to do in one, but we'll see. So as soon as that gets done, I will get on with this. And I was pushing myself. I was here every single day, 5, 6, 7, 10 hours a day, weekends. And finally I realized the more I come in, the less I get done. And I just decided just to back off a little bit, take a breath, and just get it done when it gets done. So, P7 2017 says, if it makes anyone feel better, there's a woke remake of It's a Wonderful Life in the works. That is a interesting segue, because I was thinking, I guess probably when I finished reading the Napoleon thing, I was thinking what movies not only do not need to be remade, but are impossible to remake better than the last version. In other words, what movies are remake-proof? You cannot improve of them. The first thing that came to mind was the Lord of the Rings movies. There is no way ever that they're going to surpass that. I just don't believe that it's possible. I really just cannot imagine a better version of Lord of the Rings than Peter Jackson's version of Lord of the Rings. You can never remake 2001: A Space Odyssey. You can never remake a better Schindler's List. There are a great number of movies that I do not believe it is possible. Forget about likely. I just don't think it's possible to make better. Raiders of the Lost Ark, great example. That film is it's a pretty much perfect film. You will never be able to make a better Raiders of the Lost Ark than Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now you can make a bunch of crappy Indiana Jones and the bottle of Malox, but that's not better. Back to the Future, yeah. Not so sure about Back to the Future, but generally I'm thinking that might be the case. But there's some movies just don't even start. Don't even start. Eric brings up a point. Tarantino's complaining about screenplays. The Shining. You might be able to make a better Shining, although it's so stylistically perfect. But this business about movie formulas. So there's two sides to this argument. One side is that movie formula, every movie you ever see, virtually every movie you ever see, follows the same formula. Act 1 goes from page 1 to page 30. It's about a minute a page, generally speaking. The first half hour is to set up your protagonist, establish them in their world that they're going to be leaving. Here's what they are before they became who they become. And you basically do these things. You inject them into the stream of the story at the end of Act 1 at page 30. Then from 30 to 90, that's an hour, 60 pages, you basically develop the conflict. Every time there's the conflict, the stakes have to increase, so on. Then at page 90, which is the end of the second act, you've got the dark night of the soul. They're at their lowest point. Everything that they hope to achieve has failed. They're at the absolute bottom, and then that's when they can come back and either win for a happy ending, or come back and go down for a unhappy ending. But that 3-act structure is a formula because it works. You got to get in and out of there in an hour and a half, 2 hours. So the argument then goes, as Eric pointed out, that that makes all of these movies basically formulaic. Well, it's formulaic because it's the best formula. Some people have the ability to break out of that and do that. The problem I'm finding with this Frank Luke thing is that if I try to make this one movie, it's it's cramming half of the story into the first 30 pages and then letting the other half of the story have 90 pages. If I were to take them as I've mentioned before, as two separate movies, as a part one or part two, then they both make sense and they're more or less on time. So I'm basically so far behind on this because I've written two movies when I thought I'd be writing one. But anyway, I'm just so anxious to get this thing done and then out the door. And it does help when I'm going forward, since I read this new stuff, because I'm not wasting as much time on the cut twos and trying to. I wasn't doing like it was in the 30s, but I was still trying to get some of the, some of the, a little too specific, quite a bit too specific. David Booty says, can you tell it out of time sequence like Batman Begins? I do tell it largely out of, the first one I tell out of time sequence, because I have to move the fighter pilot stuff forward into the first movie, so it's constantly having these technically the pilot is having long flashbacks to his childhood, because it's the story of his childhood, and then the second half and so on. But right now I just need to get it out the door. So there's a good story in there. I just don't know if it's one movie or two, and I don't know if it's, I don't know. All I can tell you is when I did the America's Forgotten Heroes, I forget what the numbers are for Frank Luke, but I know what they are for John Paul Jones. They wanted 8,000 to 9,000 word script, and the first draft of John Paul Jones was 34,860 words, because I didn't know what I could cut until I'd finished it. And that's the same situation I'm in with Frank Luke. 38,000 words for a 8,000 word final product. Everything's interesting, so I just write it. Anyway, that's probably it for that. So why don't we go ahead and take some questions here. Still not fully recovered on the voice, as you might or might not be able to tell, but let's get some of these questions answered here. Come on. Here we go. Starfield Studio 129 by Jacob Belchick. Thank you, Jacob, again, for all of you guys who are constantly curating these things. I'm very grateful for this. Very, very grateful always. See what we got here. We got a Jacob Belchick. We got a Dave Olson of Marusha. Good to hear from Marusha again. Roadrunner, Chris Taylor, Dave, Marusha again, George Freeland, Eric Blake. Be a challenge. We'll see what we can do. Maybe I'll move through these a little faster if I can. Jacob Belchick, you'd like to talk about Starfield, so let's talk about Starfield, which we already did. Did you see the great Starfield pronoun war that went down on Twitter thanks to the angry British howling of AZ from Healy's baby's face? What are your thoughts? I did not see the great Starfield pronoun. Somebody mentioned in the comment section that it was, something woke about it. Was somebody complaining because you could only build a character that was male or female? Is that what that was about? People have had enough of this nonsense, by the way. They've just had enough. Everybody's just completely over it. Everybody knows it's insane. Everybody knows it's political, and everybody's over it. Just over it. It's done. It's no longer shocking. It's no longer even irritating. It's just boring. It's played out. So I don't know what that was. Maybe somebody clue me in on what the controversy was with Starfield. But what good news is, at least we got one of the questions out of the way already, so there's always something to be grateful for. The opposite, you're forced to choose your pronouns. Okay. Well, of course it's the opposite. What century was I living in? Yeah, it's like Sadwig's Racing says, my pronouns are the man or the man that doesn't respect you. Yeah, anybody, and if I'm having a conversation with anybody and they say my pronouns are, I'm have a great time. I have absolutely no desire to spend any time dealing with you, and I will certainly not be working with you. So I'm sure I just found a better candidate somewhere else. So, okay. Great. You get to pick your pronouns. Fantastic. How unbelievably advanced you are. People are going to look back at this the same way they look back at things like the great tulip craze, where tulips were selling for like millions of dollars for bulbs, and any of these other mass psychosis events. People are going to just look back on this and go, what the hell were they thinking? Most of the people were thinking perfectly normal thoughts, but the noise was being made by people who were trying to climb on this look at me bandwagon, the I want some attention bandwagon. So I'm sure Bethesda wants some attention to be based. I want Bethesda wants to make it clearly known that they're in the 100% on the right side of this issue in terms of being progressive, and so you get to pick your pronouns. Fantastic. That's just great. Let's make it all about the pronouns. Apparently, that's what Starfield. That Starfield didn't fail because you got to pick pronouns, but I get the feeling that the fact that somebody on the team was thinking we got to worry about pronouns is meaning somebody's not worried about things like, it'd be kind of cool science fiction thing if we shot this laser at this thing, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, not impressed at all. Anyway, glad I got that out of the way, because it really looked so cool. And then watching a walkthrough of it, I just thought, this is so, it felt exactly like Call of Duty or something. All right, we got to move here. We got to kill these guys. We got to follow this path, and we get on this path, and we got to do this. We got to find a key for this. We got to do that. We got to come over here, and then it's just felt completely scripted, and that's the one thing you got to hand Star Citizen. People complain about lack of gameplay on Star Citizen, but the thing about Star Citizen that I really liked about Star Citizen was no one telling you what to do. You want to go someplace, just go. A lot of times I would just take a ship out there and just go and land, just watch the sun come up, drive around on a rover. I thought it was great. So I wish them luck. Okay, so moving on, we have another Jacob Belchuk, because I've already covered that one. Hail Bill. Hail Jacob. Hollywood appears to be having at least two major colliding crises. Well, at least two, I would think. Crisis number one, wokeness carving up intellectual property to appeal to the mythical modern audience. Yes, the audience that doesn't exist. And two, a shocking lack of creativity. This creates a serious mixture that seems to be killing everything. The lack of creativity means that the enormous majority of Hollywood's output is either a sequel, reboot, remake. The wokeness makes the final product appeal to basically no one. The desire to recast everything in the religion of the woke is by now too consistent to be accidental. What drives that desire? I don't think it's a desire. I've not played No Man's Sky, by the way, just to close this out, Vincent. I'm just a kind of a stickler about these things. It's one of the reasons why I don't like animated stuff so much that looks like animation. I often thought that the thing that Star Citizen should do is buy the code for No Man's Sky and then make it look better. But No Man's Sky just looks very cartoony to me, and I'm just not really interested in that. Same for what's that submarine thing? Subnautica, is it? So I never really got into that, but it looked like it was better than where Star Citizen was. Star Citizen I had hundreds of hours of great times in that game, and I stopped that in 2020, earlier, 18, 19, so it's been a while, 5, 6, 7 years. So this is a really important point. So, and I can cover Marisha's question in here too, because Marisha's question is, why are the sequels rarely as good as the original? I'll come back to Dave Wilson's question here between the two. So basically the observation is that the stuff that's being made now is garbage, and that the only thing they know how to do is take something that succeeded before, remake it badly, and recast it and all the rest of it. And then why is this? And what's the desire to do this? And I don't think that they're ghost in the shell here. I don't think that Hollywood and these young writers and producers are running towards something so much as they're running away from something. They do not have the life experiences to write their own material. I mean, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. This is one of many things I did not see coming, but now that it's here, it's pretty clear. If your objective for your children is to make sure that they never have any bad times, that they never have any conflicts, that they never lose, that they never suffer any emotional pain, that they're never bullied, they're never beaten up, they're never rejected, they're never anything. If that's what your idea of making a good child for your kids is, and that's what we've had for 20 years now, then who's going to write this stuff? I mean, who's got the life experience to write this stuff? None of them know how to write anything because none of them have had anything happen to them. Really excellent writing comes down when somebody who's been through a lot of pain puts that pain down on paper, and that's the courage that a writer has. A writer has the kind of courage to put these things down, things that happen to them that really, really hurt. And Dave Big Booty for the win here with James Tiberius Kirk saying, I need my pain, I need my pain. Since he was mentioned by name, let's just get him into the shot because, because he's James frickin' Tiberius Kirk, that's why. This is an interesting character here. That's why I like him. That's why he's my role model, because he's an interesting character. He doesn't win all the time. When he does win, he usually wins, but he doesn't win all the time. And he doesn't... He's confident, but when he crosses the line into arrogance, he pays for it. And when you have so look, I mean, this is really fun because this is what the show's really all about. This Stratosphere Studio is peeling away the emotional effect, and you get this emotional effect. I really like this character. And now it's like, let's find out why. Why do you like this character and not like whoever? So there's Kirk's got a line, as was pointed out, where he says, I need my pain. And it's a line, is that the one where he's one of the ones where he's split into two characters or something like that? There's one episode, I used to know the name of all these things by heart. I don't anymore. I don't know, it's a Turnabout Intruders, I don't know. But there was one episode where Kirk is basically, it's a transporter accident, and evil Kirk and kind Kirk get split into two different people. And kind Kirk is trying to figure out a way out of this. Evil Kirk is just basically running around, basically attempting to rape people, enemy within. And he's just, this wolf. And you would think, wow, it'd be great if you could just get rid of all of these, if you get rid of all of these bad qualities that you have. This is why the original Star Trek show was so freaking deep and important, because you would think, it's kind of a hokey plot device. You've been split into your good half and bad half. But that's not what that episode is about. The episode is really about why is the obvious logical choice the wrong choice. In other words, shouldn't we all be glad that we would have that chance? Wouldn't we all be glad to be able to take all of the evil, nasty, mean, aggressive, unpleasant aspects of our lives? Wouldn't it be great if we could just kind of dump them in the trash and go on without them? But the reason that show is so bloody brilliant is because Kirk understands that in order to be Kirk, he's got to have that animal, he's got to have that killer instinct, he's got to have that domination instinct, he's got to have that unbearable desire to win. He needs that, but it has to be under control. So if you think about it this way, that kind of animal Kirk is like the propeller, and the kind and gentle Kirk is like the rudder. He's making the decisions. But when you take one of those things away, you're left with just wimp Kirk. Kirk, nice Kirk without evil Kirk he can't handle it. It's like, he starts crying. I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't have the strength for it. And that's a profound insight into human nature. Yes, there are animalistic, bestial, horrible things that we are all born with. And the answer is not to get rid of them. The answer is to be able to control them and not have them control you. So just as one example, that's just brilliant stuff. But back to the question of why modern stuff is garbage. Somebody said that the line "I need my pain" is from Star Trek Final Frontier movie, the fifth movie, which was the worst of the movies. But it's a great line. So what I'm trying to say is this: when Kirk says something like that, I understand I'm transposing things, but let's just say for the sake of it, because it's the same basic argument. Let's say that Kirk's line, "I need that pain," wasn't from the fifth movie, but rather from that episode, The Enemy Within. It's the same. It belongs there because it's Captain Kirk. When he says he needs his pain, or when you write that episode, you have to understand that you have a dark side. You have to have the courage to face that dark side and understand how ugly it is. And then you have to be willing to have the courage to basically say, yes, I've got... The guy who wrote Enemy Within, as a writer, is saying, this bestial Kirk, let's not mince words here. I mean, he's grabbing these women and they're scratching his face. He's essentially just going through. He just wants to have sex with everything he runs into. He's not a nice guy. He's venal. He's all the rest of that. The guy who wrote that, though, the guy who wrote that story, put those words in Kirk's mouth and the actions in Kirk's mouth, had to have gone through something like that. Had to have the self-awareness to understand. Let's talk about the writer now. The writer had to have the self-awareness to understand that I've done awful, awful things in my life that I'm ashamed of, and I couldn't control them, or if I could have, I didn't. And that's a great moral failing on my part. And you don't get to have that kind of self-awareness if you're told that everything that you're perfect and that everything you do is absolutely magnificent, that your artwork is the best, that you're the smartest kid in the room. This whole self-esteem movement is just deadly poison. Not only are you told that everything you do is perfect, you're also told that anything that goes wrong is not your fault. Not your fault. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. I didn't do this. Blah, blah, why, blah, 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 all the stuff we see. So you can't expect somebody from a millennial or Gen Z person who's coming up in their 20s and 30s, that's the age of people who are in Hollywood, essentially. You can't expect these people to write stuff like this when they've never experienced it. Gene Roddenberry won the Distinguished Flying Cross. He was under fire in World War II, and so did many of the actors and many of the writers. These guys had life and death experiences happen to them, and they had to work their way through it. If you're one of that generation that wrote for Star Trek, the original series, or Roddenberry and so on, I mean, I've forgotten off the top of my head what it was that Roddenberry did, but I want to say he had some enormously close calls. Rod Serling, same way. So when you've had situations where you've watched your best friend just turn into pink mist or whatever the case may be, or you're floating in the water for 3 days and there's sharks taking people around you, you've got something to write about, and you've done some deep thinking. And not only that, but you've actually had time to do some deep thinking. You didn't spend your entire life being entertained by this thing. And this thing is actually starting to be a real problem for me now, because these shorts are getting to be a problem. I'm a curious guy, and I love information, and these things know how to send me stuff that is the kind of stuff I want to see, and I know they're 30 seconds long, and it's getting to be a real issue, genuine issue, and has been for a while now. He was a B-17 pilot or aviator. I knew he was an air crewman. So think about it. So you got this new generation of writers. What do they know, right? What do they know? What are their life experiences? They didn't even have a boomer experience. I mean, we got to go around and ride our bicycles and fall off the bicycles, and and we had real friends, and we would talk about girls, and we'd talk about this, and we'd talk about that, and we'd have deep conversations, and we felt real pain about things, and our connections were real strong. It wasn't a swipe right or a swipe left. It was, genuine big heartbreaks and big wins and all of it. And there's no humanity in the current crop of writers, because they've never had to get hurt, and they've never been bored. And all of your deep thinking comes when you're bored. You can't think deep thoughts like what are the worst things I've ever done, and why did I do them? You're not going to have that thought if you've got 24-hour entertainment. Brain's going to bounce off of that. That's something bad. I must immediately euthanize myself here with, or at least anesthetize myself with some kind of entertainment. So I have to think about that. But they've never lived lives. They've never done anything. They've never been hurt, really badly hurt. They think they've been badly hurt all the time, which is an indication of how unbadly hurt they've ever been. When you hear young people talking about, America's the worst country in the world to live in, it's a version of that. It's like, you believe this because you have no idea what real pain, what real tyranny, what real racism, what real stuff. You have no idea what it is. And the more smoothed out your life gets, the more these tiny little ripples seem like big deals to you. I have not watched 1, 2, 3 yet. Thanks very much for asking, but in any event, you get the idea. So there's that. And the other thing too, about if you look at Star Trek, for example, real Star Trek, one of the qualities that Animal Kirk has is, he's just constantly on the prowl for women. And when he's together as one guy, that just think about you look at Kirk now and you see all of the so-called womanizing that he did, and you think, oh my gosh, how gauche, how tacky. But when you saw it then, you saw it through the lens of the society that was projecting it. And there is certainly an argument to be made about sexism and patting women on the butt and the miniskirts. There's an argument to be made there, and I get it, I've heard it. But ultimately, what you're saying about Kirk is that this guy is alive. He's confident. He's attractive. He knows he's attractive. And he likes women because he likes women, because he's alive, because he's got blood pumping through his veins. He's still got some testosterone in his bloodstream. He's not just plain neutered, He's not just this is why I know I'm going to start another giant, I don't want, not a big war here or anything, but this is the difference between Kirk for me and Picard, is that Kirk is a man who has testosterone and who is a young man who is on the top of his game, and Picard is a there's too much of the feminine Kirk in Picard. There's not enough of the wolf in Picard. Now that's what people like about Picard. Oh, he's so moral, he's so morally advanced, and Kirk will, Picard will do the right thing and he'll stand up against Starfleet if it's a violation of this, and then okay, fine, that's fine. But he's an old man. Even the new Picard thinks he's an ancient man, but even in Next Generation, he's not a weak guy. I certainly grant you that. But he's not. I don't think he's interesting. Bart's Treasure said Picard's the ultimate goody-goody. He's kind of, see, that's it. And Steve Woods actually got it. Like, Steve Woods said Picard is married to T. That's exactly the way I look at it. That's exactly it. Kirk is thinking, my God, did you see this green alien that we just beamed on board here that we have to take for the next 2 weeks? Did you see how hot she is? And Kirk is thinking about that, or Rand or something, and Picard's thinking about his tea. That's his secret pleasure. Goes into the captain's ready room. He's got his own little lounge, right next to the bridge. He can sit there in quiet, and all the rest of this garbage. And it's like, okay, it's like, wow, you're really going to cut loose, John. Look, what are you going to do now that you've got some time to yourself? Tea, Earl Grey, hot. Well, hot damn, man, you are an inspiration. He's I don't know what the actual ages of Picard and Kirk are as characters, but Picard seems to me to be Kirk's father in terms of age. I'm sure they're probably closer than this. So Kirk is a product of a confident space-age society. Captain Kirk was written, a show was done during the Apollo era, when we could do anything, and we were just going to go where no man has gone before. And the opening of Star Trek Generations is the same as opening of Star Trek, except of course it's where no one has gone before. That's not an insignificant change, by the way. Yeah, I might as well just open this can of worms. So by the time you get to Next Generation in the 90s, or late 80s, or whatever it was, the opening narration has changed from, it's exactly the same, except in the original Star Trek, it's to boldly go where no man has gone before. And then by the time you get to Next Generations, it's to boldly go where no one has gone before. Inclusion of women and all that. Now, inclusion of women in society and all that's great. Half of the people in society who are functioning in our society are women, and they're doing, you just can't imagine our society without it. I've worked mostly for women most of my life here. But what is significant about that difference? And this is why I'm going to just go ahead and open up this can of worms. On the original series, you say where no man has gone before. And you had Lieutenant Uhura, who is obviously not only extremely capable, she was a trendsetter. Uhura, as for those of you not familiar with it, or God knows I've told the story several times, Uhura wanted out after the first season of Star Trek, and Martin Luther King at a party said, "You cannot leave the show. You cannot. You have to stay with the show. What you're doing is so important." So it's not like the women were all just ditzes or anything. I had a lot of smart women in the original series. In fact, in the pilot, she was Major Roddenberry went on to Major Barrett, I guess, went on to become Nurse Chapel, but she was the executive officer in the original pilot, and that's all fine. But what's the difference? And to me, the difference is, well, there's no question that women do all of these things very, very well. I have yet to see, and I'm looking forward to somebody clarifying this on me, I have yet to be aware of a woman explorer. Now, by all means, if I'm overlooking somebody, let me know. And you can say that the women's movement happened after most of the Earth had already been discovered. That's a true statement, but does kind of make you wonder why the women's movement didn't happen earlier. But I have not seen any women explorers ever, because generally speaking, exploring is what men do. Dora the Explorer, well, okay. Amelia Earhart was a pioneer, so you could give Earhart. Yeah, I suppose you could give her Earhart. Janeway is, let's take Janeway as an example. Janeway is a perfectly competent captain. I had no problem with Janeway whatsoever. None. She's perfectly competent, capable, absolutely tremendous captain, strong, all of that. I have no problem with her at all. At all. But they weren't exploring. And see here, this is where I don't want to be confused, because people at Caledon's saying Sarah Connor is the best representation of a badass woman. She is a badass woman. Ripley is a badass woman. I'm not talking about female characters. I'm not talking about not having strong women. I'm talking about exploring. I'm talking about going where no man has gone before. That's such a great name. I want to make sure I get this right. Hello, James from Phoenix. Where'd it go? Short-ass bastard. I want to get that right. Short-ass bastard says exploring isn't comfortable. That's exactly right. It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable, and it's not glamorous. If you come back with a discovery, it can be glamorous, but you don't know you're going to get that. A lot of explorers went out there and never came back again. Exploration tends to be, to me, seems to be a typically male quality. So why is this such a big deal? I don't even have a problem with them changing it to where no one has gone before, because there's men and women on that crew. There are men and women on the original crew. I get it. But there is something there. And that something is a bit of a departure of reality in favor of not hurting people's feelings. And that's kind of where I think we go off the rails. When we start pretending like what's not true is true. women explored, but right after men cleared out the really bad stuff. But that Lapco, that means they didn't explore. They settled. This is not to take anything away from them. You know, I can't imagine anything more courageous than being a frontier wife. Being a woman on the American frontier required the kind of courage that the men didn't need to have. But they weren't the first ones there. And I don't think they've ever been the first ones there. And what was this movie that was made 4 or 5 years ago with Natalie Portman, and it's like this weird alien presence. Somebody want to help me with this? And so these 5 women go looking for their men, and you got Natalie Portman, who's what, 5 foot maybe, weighs maybe 80 pounds. And you see these 5 women going off into the jungle, and they've all got Annihilation. Yeah, I think it was Annihilation. And they've all got their rifles, and it's just these five strong, independent women going into the jungle to go find out what happened to the guys. It's like, I don't believe it. I'm done. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And the reason I don't believe it is I've never seen it in real life, ever. And this is see, there you go. Now that's the kind of balance I'm talking about. Roadrunner nails it. Men explore, women civilized. Couldn't have put it better. Exactly. Sacagawea, yes, Sacagawea was an interpreter, but Sacagawea did not plan the what was it called? The official name of the something of exploration. This is one of those cases where I get nervous when I get these brain hiccups. The Lewis and Clark expedition had an official name, the something of exploration. Anyway, Sacagawea was there, but she didn't organize it. You know what I mean? This is kind of the point. This is kind of the point. So, the core of discovery. Thank you, Dave. So at that point, you start getting to the point where it's like, okay, we're gonna make this change here, okay, but we're getting a little bit further away from people's overall general average tendencies. And now, when we talk about what is it about wokeness that everybody who is opposed to wokeness hates? What is it about wokeness that bothers so many people like me? For me, the problem with wokeness is that it's a lie. It's a lie that is told in order to have other people feel good about things that aren't true. There are a significant number of women out there now who genuinely believe that they can beat up men. And this is why Natalie Portman feel excellent strong woman as Padme. Yes. I had no problem with her as Padme either. It's badly written, but that's not her fault. But wokeness is a lie. It's just plain not true. And when you see something like this, so I don't know if you've seen this clip, but there's a number of them out there. And one of them is the U.S. women's soccer team challenged guys who had played in a league, a British football league. They were all retired. They were too old. So they retired out of this league, and it wasn't like the NFL. It was like a relatively minor kind of a league. And these women who are Olympic champions, top of their game, get out there and say, we're going to kick these men's asses. We're going to kick them across the field. We're going to kick them. They said that we're not as good as they are. Well, we're just as good as they are. We're better than they are. We're younger, faster, and so on. So went there and played them, and the guys beat them 12-0, and then they called the game. And then a high school boys football team beat them, as Lesko points out. And people hear me talking about this all the time. They must think I'm just this terrible misogynist. I'm not. I'm genuinely not. It's just I don't like lies. And when people are institutionalizing lying, you don't have drama anymore. This is why modern movies suck. They suck because they're telling you that you need to believe this thing that you know is not true. It's not lost on me that the only really genuinely excellent, strong female characters, believable, strong female characters, Sarah Connor, Ripley, one or two others, Janeway, are written by men. And they're written by older men by today's standards. They're not Ripley and Sarah Connor are both doing what they're doing because of their maternal instincts. They're not out there to kick ass. They would rather not be there. That's what makes them even more courageous and more interesting. David Weiss says the only thing I hate worse than lying is skim milk, which is water that's lying about being milk. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Ron Swanson. See, he's like a joke. Everybody thought, oh, we're going to make this guy into this kind of super conservative, dirtbag, and everybody will hate him. It's like, no, everybody loves Ron Swanson. You know why? Because Ron Swanson tells the truth. That's why. That's why people love him. That's why even, same with Archie Bunker, same with Alec Baldwin's character on 40 Rocks, same with was it, I want to say Denny Crane. They write them as a joke, but people love them because they take them seriously. And the reason is because Denny Crane and Archie Bunker and Ron Swanson tell the truth. And that's why people love him. He tells the truth. Eric says, my first full-length screenplay has a heroine who learns how to be good with guns. Not her fists, guns. Yeah. See, that's why Ripley isn't lying, and that's why Sarah Connor isn't lying. You don't, they tried to remake it, obviously. You didn't see Sarah Connor try and take on Arnold Schwarzenegger and knock him out with a punch. Because that was written by a man, and it was written by a man who knows it. That's just plain ridiculous. But that's what they're feeding us today, because the people who are writing this stuff today have been told that this is reality, but it's not reality. It's got nothing to do with reality. That's why it's junk. It's junk because it's got no connection to reality at all. So there you go. And I just find this to be sad. And so to wrap up this whole thing, the question is, why do they do so many remakes? The answer is because they cannot think of anything worth doing. There's nothing they can think of that's new and original that's even close. And so the only they're like art. You know what it is? The best way to think about it is this: modern writers are not writers; they're archaeologists. I'm rather fond of this. Just kind of came to me. These woke writers and stuff, they're not writers, and they're not entertainers, they're not producers, they're not storytellers. They're archaeologists. They have unearthed artifacts from the past that they know were successful. They've unearthed these entertainment artifacts that they knew had a huge impact before, and they've looked at them and they've x-rayed them, and then they've given them a carbon-14 dating and stuff, and examined them from all the different angles, and then they've decided that all we can really do is recreate this artifact, and people will be as interested in it. But they're not capable of making a new one. They're only capable of copying the old one to defective standards of materials. They've got the blueprint. In this case, these modern filmmakers, they've got the blueprint. They know what Snow White is. They know what Star Trek is. They know what Star Wars is. They know what it is. They know the blueprint of it. But the ingredients they put in are not the original ingredients. They're the ingredients that they like. They're just changing what works by putting in elements that don't work and serving it up as something new. And it's not only not new, all it does is destroy interest in what used to be there. And this is a common thing. This idea of I call them stolen valor kind of thing. Yeah, so they're actually kind of like you know what they are? They're a cargo cult. That's what these people are. I love telling the story of cargo cults. So for those of you unfamiliar with it, I mention it relatively frequently. There won't be too many of you out there. But you might want to look it up, get some more details. But basically, a cargo cult is this. Essentially what happened, it's not just the only time, but the most recent time and probably the clearest time was during World War II. We're out there in the Pacific, and all of these little micro islands micronations in the Pacific, little tiny little specks of land. They're isolated from all these other specks of land. So you've got very simple people living there who are fishing and living happy lives, and they're wonderful people. I'm not taking a word away from them. And they live in islands like Pelelu, and they live in, Tarawa, and they live in, Siam and Tinian and Guadalcanal and all the rest of these places. So they're living their simple lives out there, and they're happy as can be. Turns out that in the much bigger world, might as well be coming in from another galaxy for all they know, these two enormous industrial powers are having a face-to-face confrontation on their property. And so all of a sudden, did I say Siam? Sorry, I meant to say Saipan. All of a sudden, there's this clash of these enormously powerful forces that they're barely aware of. Did I not give George credit for making the point? George said something that he didn't say cargo cult. He said, he did say cargo cult. I'm sorry, I just read the bamboo facsimile. I'm sorry, George, my mistake. I didn't see cargo cult in there, so it was an honest mistake, but it was a mistake. Yes, so basically what happens is this. In reality, what actually happened was you've got these simple villagers, and then you find a place, one of these islands, and maybe there's a battle there or maybe not. But all of a sudden, the most industrialized nation in the world is putting everything there. It's a tiny little island. We're island hopping. It's an unsinkable aircraft carrier, basically. And so America arrives angry and fully geared up and brings unimaginable quantities of stuff to this island that appear to be miraculous to the people who live on the island. Technologically, it is miraculous. Radios and just quality of clothing and all the rest of this stuff. Okay, and so the natives are amazed at this, and America is there, and all of these plane loads of supplies just landing around the clock. And they're Americans are throwing around real money that can buy things that they can't believe, and it's just like it's not entirely pleasant for them either, but it's like, wow, aliens have landed on our backyard. So this goes on for maybe a year, maybe two at the most or so, and then the next thing you know, America's won the war, and we just go home. And all of these islanders that had gotten used to this vast amount of wealth and material stuff coming into their backyards, all of a sudden that stuff dries up. And some of them miss it. And some of them like to be able to buy cold beers or cotton T-shirts or whatever the case may be. And it's not there anymore. And so this is where we get to the cargo cult, because it's cargo. That's what we're talking about. Huge amounts of stuff coming into this island. And so what archaeologists found was after the U.S. went away, they would go back a couple years later, and they would find that on some of these islands, the natives had built things that looked like control towers. They're elevated buildings with a little wide thing like a little veranda on the top, and then they built things that look like airplanes. They're long structures, essentially they're logs with things coming out of the side and smaller things coming out of the side on the back. And they basically built all of these things to make it look like airplanes, because as far as they could tell, the sky gods came down because of the signs on the ground. They saw a control tower. They saw airplanes on the ground. So if we put those things back, then they'll come back. They'll come back with the cargo. They basically inverted the cause and effect. When the Americans left, all that was left was just control towers and abandoned airplanes, and they just figured, okay, if we put these things out there, then they'll come back. But they didn't. And so what the entire point of what a cargo cult represents metaphorically is, it represents the belief that if you build something that has the appearance of the thing, then that is going to function as if it were the thing. And when I say the appearance of a thing, I'm talking about the kind of thing like Gilligan's Island where you're making a radio out of, coconut fronds. They built something that had the appearance of airplanes, had the appearance of control towers, appearance of runways, but they had nothing in them. There was nothing there. They were shamanistically inspired because their conception of what was actually there was so poor And you can't blame them. I mean, if aliens were to come and land in, in the Mojave Desert, and these flying saucers just came down, they started handing out things that were worth billions of dollars, just handing them out just while they're unloading stuff. Hey, here's some chocolate. You never had this before. You'll probably dig this. I'd be standing there too. And if they left, I'd be sitting there. Well, how do we get them back? We'd start looking for ways to signal them. We'd think about what can we do to let them know we'd like them to come back. And we would fail because we just couldn't comprehend why they were here in the first place. So cargo cult's a good example for how these people think. They build things that look like Star Wars, sound like Star Wars, have the same names as Star Trek or Star Wars. We're gonna put a ship in there that's got a round thing in the front and two things up on posts on the back. That's Star Trek, right? We'll call it USS. We'll call it the Discovery. And it's like, so it looks like the Star Trek thing, right? And we still got the little crest thing, so it's got to be Star Trek. So all the people that like Star Trek are gonna like Discovery, right? No, Discovery is not Star Trek. It's nothing to do with Star Trek. It's anti-Star Trek. It is the antithesis of Star Trek in many ways. And by the way, while I was not a huge fan of Next Generation was certainly not the antithesis of Star Trek, but Discovery is. And so, as long as we make something that's got a round thing in the front and then two things with engines in the back, then that's Star Trek. It's not. It just looks like Star Trek. It's what people who don't understand Star Trek see Star Trek as, because they don't have the intellect to understand it. You could do Star Trek without the Enterprise. You could do Star Trek without transporters. You could do Star Trek. I could write a movie with this guy and Spock and McCoy on a planet wearing their outfits. I could write an hour with just the three of them. That would be Star Trek. And that's because I know what the values of Star Trek are, and I know what the characters are supposed to be and what the characters exist for. And the reason that Star Trek became Star Trek is because the stuff that the guys who wrote Star Trek, and one or two women, DC Fontana wrote some great stuff, but basically these people lived a life that was interesting enough. And when you're a B-17 pilot like Roddenberry, you could call something the mystery drive or the magical drive. But Joe, is it B. Joe Trimble? Yeah, you could write something called I'm trying to think of a non-scientific name, but what Roddenberry originally came up with, if you look at the original pilot, it wasn't the warp drive. It was the space warp drive. Space warp drive, space warp factor 1, he said. And you just kind of shorten that to warp factor. And then you had the transporter, and you had things like the tricorder, and you had communicators. So communicators are here. Here's my communicator. Does much more than the Star Trek 23rd century communicators do. But they had the sense that they were not that it was just a box with a drive in it. It's that you could take that box apart, and you had people with enough scientific knowledge that it made it science fiction. That's the science part of science fiction. The spore drive that magically transports something through somebody's emotional connection to a series of non-existent roots is fantasy. The warp drive is science fiction. You can not only can you understand that it's actually buildable, at least in practice, you can have discussions about how fast is warp 6 and all of that stuff, because it's designed to make sense. I've used this many times before. It's a great example. The warp drive works on dilithium. Now, there's no such thing as dilithium, but there is such a thing as lithium, and there are dihydroxides, and so you take these two chemical terms, you put them together, and you have something that's not real, but it sounds real. Dilithium sounds absolutely real. That's not a mistake. It's not an accident. It's not unobtainium, right? It's not unobtainium. It runs on dilithium. What's dilithium? Well, it's an isotope of lithium that has particular qualities that we need. There you go. Isotope. Do you hear what I said? That kind of thing. So all of this stuff has a basis in reality, and science fiction fans can nerd out about it because you can have a discussion about it because it's got some kind of foundation in reality. Am I saying Star Trek isn't real? I'm not. I'm saying it's more real than anything that we're aware of. You can't do that with this other stuff. You can't do it with the. Why does on Discovery? I mean, honestly, proud to say I've never seen more than a 3-minute clip of Discovery. But my understanding is that when this thing is about to travel from one place to another, I've seen the clip. The saucer section, there's a outer ring and an inner ring. And I thought, why would you waste that space? What's the point? Why would you do that? Just looks stupid. But you see, when the thing goes in, this thing goes, flips like real fast like that, right? When it does its thing, yeah? Yeah, and Battle Smurf says transparent aluminum. Okay. I can believe there could be such a thing as transparent aluminum. But back to Discovery. So Discovery does this thing, right? And people like me watch this, and we say things like, first of all, I don't know any reason why it would have to do this, but for the sake of the argument, let's say it has to do this. If this thing is doing this as this, then why isn't the other side being spun around by the torque? You know, why is there no reaction to this in space? Why? I'd rather have the disc go around like that, but this thing flipping like this, it's because some douchebag somewhere said, "Oh, it'd be really cool if the thing that." No, it wouldn't be cool. This is. I know this sounds like so obvious, but the people like me look at this and said the thing has mass. It's got a certain amount of mass to it, and this thing cannot just instantly accelerate and do these, 300 RPM spins and then just disappear. Just can't happen. It's physically impossible. And the original Star Trek never showed you anything that was physically impossible. And this needs to be said again too. The thing that was what is the iconic image, really, from Star Trek for me anyway, without a doubt, the thing that blew my mind about Star Trek. I'm not aware of an episode that it's not in, and that is the Starfield, right? Sending out those radar pulses, the sensor pulses. And we are moving through the galaxy. How can we tell we're moving through the galaxy? Because we can see the stars coming, and the closer stars go by faster, and the other ones go further away. And that moving through the stars thing is so iconic. That's the first thing I wrote software for ever in my life on the Apple IIe was to do something that did the Starfield effect. And I didn't have the math to really do it. I just basically did it brute force. But when you have that Starfield effect, you understand that stars are little points out there, and when you go through them, they're going to look exactly like this, right? So that Starfield effect is what makes Star Trek Star Trek. And the first thing that this douchebag JJ Abrams did was put the Enterprise into a wormhole. And now it's magic again. It's magic. And this whole thing about starships going stopping, the way they did that with Star Wars, it's like, that's not, no. It's very clear, it's like you got these powerful engines, you just, and it starts going faster and faster, and then there's like, at least in the original series, you would presumably just cross the speed of light the same way you cross it in an airplane. Maybe there's a sonic boom or a luminal boom behind them, but it just keeps going. Faster. The faster you go, the faster it moves. And when it comes time to get into orbit, you just simply come back on the throttle, and the thing just slows down because it's dealing with warp space, not real space. And you could take it instantaneously. Could look at that view screen in any episode of Star Trek ever, and you would know approximately how fast the Enterprise was going relative to where it goes other times. And I was just to love it when he would say something like, it's set a course for Starbase 4, warp factor 3. Warp factor 3? It's going to take us 4 months. Well, we'll do some science on the way. We're not in any hurry. Why stress the drives? And if you keep things down around warp 3 or 4, That means that when you have a time when you need to go fast and you get up to warp 6 or 7 or 8, then you go, holy crap, this thing's really moving. If Enterprise constantly moved at warp factor 8, then there'd be no drama. It's like coming in on stage in an opera and immediately starting with the highest note you can sing and maintaining that note for the whole time. It's just dumb. It's dumb. Dumb. It's just dumb. And it's written by dumb people. And I have tried to find anything interesting about these characters. The only character that I can find remotely interesting in the new franchises in Kurtzman Trek, the only one I can find remotely interesting is the guy who plays Christopher Pike, because he's got a certain amount of charisma. The hair is almost like a joke, but he's got something. But these helmsmen and you know, I can't tell them apart. Honestly, it's like who are these people? It's like, what are their characters? What makes them unique? I don't know. I know on Discovery, the things that makes them unique is whether or not they can, you know, cry about things together, and also about whether they can cheer each other on. You know, it's like, Mr. Sulu, I'm going to need you to. When we get right at the closest point to the sun, Mr. Sulu, I'm going to need you to go to warp factor 6 on a heading of 143 Mark 024, and you got to really nail this, or else we're going to be stuck in time forever. And Sulu's sitting there, and he engages the warp drive, boom, brings us right back to the second. And he did all of that without Chekhov going, come on, Sulu, you got this, Sulu, you can do it. You've got this. And when they zipped around the sun and came back into real time, Spock didn't go, science is awesome. You know, they didn't make any of these meta comments because they're too embarrassed. And that's the thing I hate most about modern Trek. And by the way, Marvel's got this disease and everything's infected with it now. The meta comment, you know. You've just seen something, you know, the world has been destroyed or something, and or you know, the moon has exploded or something like that, and one of them looks up and goes, well, that's not something you see every day. Wow, how incredibly meta of you. What a superior mind you have to not be swept up in the emotion of the moon being blown to bits. You're still able to maintain your ironic kind of stance. You still got a screen between you and it, what's really happening. And I think it was Laurie Anderson who said, yeah, watch it on TV, tones it down, you know. Don't usually do that, but I was stuck here this time. Anson Mount, is that his name? Yeah, he's got something. And the little bits I've seen of it, the first officer, who looks like Majel Barrett, she's got something. But the Spock on Strange New Worlds, he just looks like I almost said a nerd, but that's insulting. He looks like a doofus. You know, the guy they cast, he's got this kind of tiny little pinched out little round face. He looks like a doofus. Leonard Nimoy was cast because his face is a very strange face. Leonard Nimoy's face is bizarre. And I'll give him credit because Zachary Quinto also has kind of an angular, unusual face. They look like they might be Vulcans. But this guy he looks like the guy they cast. He looks like Mr. Spock. What did you do before you joined the Enterprise? Well, I was a mid-level manager at Prudential Insurance Company. You know, it's what? He is the most nothing of nothing burgers. You can't find a guy with an unusual face. Now, when you're casting somebody like Green Goblin and then you go with Willem Dafoe, you are 90% of the way there already. Willem Dafoe is one of my favorite actors, and Willem Dafoe is a bizarre-looking dude, and he knows it, and he knows how to play that. I love him for it. I love him. Absolutely love him. Some people look at Willem Dafoe and they say, "Oh, I gotta fix his teeth." It's like, you fix his teeth, you don't have Willem Dafoe anymore. You got another guy from Central Casting. What an unbelievably bland choice they picked for one of the most iconic, interesting characters ever. They should have found somebody. I would have been much happier if they'd found a Mongolian actor or something like that, you know. But this is just terrible, terrible. Um, and there's a lot of that going around, you know. Just like, oh, we're going to cast a decent looking, bland. I mean, this guy, he's a good looking guy, but he's not a pretty guy. You know, he's not. It's not a pretty. That's not a pretty guy. It's a handsome guy. It's not pretty. And this guy that they've got for, again, I haven't seen any of it. I've just seen clips and mostly stills. The new Kirk in Strange New Worlds, I see him in the chair compared to this guy, and he looks like a skinny little twerp. He looks like a resident assistant in a dorm room, sitting in the chair. Where's his charisma? Where's his charisma? He doesn't have any charisma. None. He's a friend of the producer or whatever. It's like he's a good-looking young guy, and it's like they probably thought, well, he's a young white male, so you know that'll make the fans happy. Where's his charisma? There isn't any charisma. There's nothing interesting about the guy. Shatner is an interesting character, is an interesting actor rather, because Shatner, like I said, is a handsome guy, but he's not a pretty guy. He's unique. He's unique. And you know, there you go. Yeah. So, yeah, and the Kirk is like, and now look, you can see even from this picture, right? He's got a little weight on. He's a little heavy. It's a problem Bill Shatner had throughout his entire career, I suppose, but certainly through the length of Star Trek and beyond. He likes to eat. Now he's completely horrifically fat, but when did they change to the green jersey? Was it season 2 and 3, I want to say? Because when he's in the gold jersey, like the rest of the crew, he's awesome. When he gets the green captain's jersey with the V-neck and the belt, they made that specifically for him, wrote it into the series because he was too overweight. They gave him that because it gave him a chance to put on a girdle underneath it. That's basically the reason why he got it. The green captain's outfit. And anytime I've seen the green captain's outfit, I think, I don't know. He looks much better in these things. But he's a little heavy. But he's solid. And, you know, and you see him working out like in Charlie X. It's like, he's not exactly a muscle man, but he looks like he's in excellent shape. And then you look at this guy they've got on Strange New Worlds, and he just looks like a twig, you know. It's like, I hope nothing bad happens. All right, whatever. But it's that confidence, man. That confidence. That's what I like about him. He goes into combat, knows he's going to win. He meets some space alien from wherever, and he's going to put the moves on her, and he's pretty sure he's gonna win that one too, and he usually does. So that's the thing I like about Kirk is I like his confidence. I like his willingness to admit when he's wrong. I like his self-awareness, and I like his sense of humor. None of which I see on any of these other characters. Captain Quirk. Kirk's not a queer. Kirk isn't a queer. He is an excellent shot. That does sort of queer the queering. Anyway, yeah. Chris Pine. I'm not crazy about Chris Pine. I tell you who I do like very much, who I believed 100% was the guy who played Christopher Pike in the JJ Abrams in the Kelvin universe. The guy who played Pike was terrific. I believed him 100%. I never really believed Chris Pine. Chris Pine never seemed like he was smart enough or controlled enough to be Kirk. You know, he just, is his name Bruce Greenwood? I never bought Chris Pine. He He was a guy who was riding a motorcycle, and getting into bar fights. It's like James Kirk was a walking stack of books, is how he was described at the Academy. Yeah, the guy who played Christopher Pike on the first two movies was terrific. He was like, I absolutely believe this guy is a captain, starship captain. Like I said last show, I think on Stress for Lunch, I'm going to eventually, when I get this thing out the door, I'm going to do the definitive, cranky, old purist guide to what is and what is not Star Trek and why. Yeah, so I knew that the JJ Abrams things were in trouble when I saw the first trailer for the first movie, and when he's 11 years old and he stole a car, drives it to the edge of the thing and the police come out, it's like, okay. Kirk's not a rebel, you idiots. Han Solo is a rebel. Kirk's not a rebel. You don't understand the first thing about this character. You just think it would be cool. I've not read any of the novels, I don't think. But that's basically it. They try to make him into a rebel. That's like, Kirk isn't a rebel. The Enterprise doesn't travel down wormholes. And a list of other things that... And you don't build the Enterprise in a field in Iowa. I don't see any reason why you would do that. Oh, and another thing, by the way, is another thing. The Enterprise can't land on planets. The only time you can ever see a Federation starship in an atmosphere is if it is extremely high, and that is extremely, extremely unlikely, like if you're being pursued by an F-104. The Enterprise doesn't land on planets, doesn't go into the ocean. The Enterprise doesn't have anti-gravity things, and it sure as hell doesn't have a series of rocket thrusters that magically appear out of nowhere when it's falling out of the sky. That's just lazy. Lazy, lazy, lazy. There you go, Roadrunner gets it right. The Enterprise can land on a planet once. That was the only thing I liked about the Next Generation movies, was when they crashed the saucer segment. That was actually pretty cool. But no, if you give the Enterprise the ability to fly into the atmosphere and hover, then it's a UFO. It's not the Enterprise anymore. It doesn't have hovering capability. That's why it doesn't have landing gear. That's why it has transporters. So just to wrap this particular segment up, here's the pathology. Here's what happens. You get lazy writers. And this does not necessarily mean they're Gen Z writers. It just means they're lazy. There are plenty of lazy writers of every age. But a lazy writer needs something to happen. And he will take the first thing that comes to mind, even if it's not allowed. He'll just do it. He'll break the rules because he needs it to happen. And that's laziness. And he thinks, well, I did it. Yeah, you did it. Now you have destroyed the entire convention. Okay? Enterprise, in the opening of Into Darkness, Enterprise is hiding under the surface of the ocean. It sure as hell looks cool when it's coming out of the water, no question about that. But now, JJ, now you have to tell me why the Enterprise doesn't land on every planet. Because it just didn't have any trouble doing it. It just decided to set it down there. Right? So that's what you did, JJ. Congratulations. Got yourself a nice shot. Very impressive looking. You've destroyed one of the conventions of the show, which is the reason you have a away team, or the reason you have a landing party, is more properly termed, is because the thing doesn't land. It's so simple. So they wreck it, and the lazy writing wrecked Star Wars too, right? In the travesty, in The Last Jedi, right? How many Star Wars fans did I watch go through the same thing I went through as a Star Trek fan once JJ Abrams got a hold of him? So Admiral Holdo decides to put the thing into hyperspace and goes right through this ship and blows it up. And it's just like with Star Trek, it's an incredible shot. It's a breathtaking shot. And you get your shot. Congratulations, you got your shot. Now you've destroyed. Last Jedi wasn't JJ. It was actually. I mean, JJ did the first one and the third one, and yes, I know Rian Johnson argued with him, but JJ Abrams is the kind of guy. JJ Abrams is the kind of guy that went in there and smashed the rule book. He did it with Star Trek, he did it with Star Wars, so whether he did it or not doesn't matter. It was like, oh, wow, it's a great shot. And then the second people are coming out of the theater saying, I guess all you really need to do to beat the Empire is just to get a big honking brick, maybe, and put a hyperdrive on it. And just, do it. Okay, maybe JJ hated it, that's fine. But JJ is not, JJ's the laziest guy ever. Kurtzman and JJ, that whole family, they're just lazy. I mean, JJ with Lost and this idea of the mystery box, get everybody real excited about a mystery box. Well, great, that is kind of cool. Yeah, we're going to build this whole thing up about this big mystery that's in this box. Fantastic. So what's in the box? Nothing. You don't need anything in the box. You can just have people act like it's interesting, and then you'll get through 15 episodes with building this thing. Well, yeah, but what's in it? What's worth it? Nothing. There's nothing in it. Doesn't that piss people off when you find out there's nothing in this box that you've been talking about for 15 episodes? Yeah, but for 14 episodes, you got their full attention. Okay. All right. You had a phenomenon on your hands, and then you ruined it all because you couldn't deliver on the things that you basically set up. Yeah, Mobomoto says, when they killed Han, I stopped watching Star Wars movies. Maybe the greatest example in all of pop culture is that moment. Han Solo, arguably the most popular character in 3 generations. Iconically charming, popular. The women, like the old cliche goes, the women want to sleep with him, the men want to be buddies with him. He's the absolute top draw character in the United States and planet Earth. He is the highest value character you've got. Han Solo. So, you're going to kill him in this movie? Okay, people die. But if you're going to kill him in this movie, it had better be him saving the entire frickin' galaxy, because otherwise you are wasting your potential energy. It's one of the reasons why so many people, this is what Gerald Posner said in his book, so one of the reasons why so many people believe that there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy is they cannot reconcile the fact that this incredibly handsome, powerful, charismatic president was killed by this loser, skinny, weirdo dork who was acting on his own. They said they can't emotionally square it. They have to put more weight onto the Oswald side of the pen. They just can't. It just doesn't. You can't balance it. That's basically it. George says Johnson and Abrams make a uniquely terrible combo because the mystery box is nothing but building up expectations, and Johnson thinks clever writing is all about subverting expectations. Yeah. So you got a mystery box that you're fascinated with, and you open it up. Turned out it's not empty at all. It's just a pile of dog crap. And you just go, not only am I not interested, this is repulsive. This is not what I came here to see. It's the thing about Tarantino that I like so much. I saw it in Inglourious Bastards, which I was, but when I saw it in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I realized the genius of the guy. He's like, Quentin Tarantino is confident enough. He's confident about himself enough to give the audience what they want, not what his cocktail party friends want. He gives the audience what they want. When I saw the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I couldn't believe. I just couldn't believe it, because I know the story of Manson and Sharon Tate and what went on that night, and I saw all of the things happening. And he's giving it to you. It's like 5 p.m. Here's Sharon Tate at the movie theater. Yes, that's where she was, and it's like here it comes. Here comes all of this horror. Here comes all of this nightmare. Here comes all of this tragedy, the kind of thing you look at and you think, I just wish I could have been there to prevent it. And then Quentin Tarantino puts you there to prevent it. And completely rewrites history. And I just thought this may be the most ballsy thing I've ever seen. The previous ballsier thing I've ever seen was when Quentin Tarantino had them pull up outside of Jackrabbit Slim's, and they're in the convertible, and Uma Thurman turns to Vince Vega and says, "Don't be such a square." And he drew a square on the frame. He drew. She goes like, "Don't be such a square," and he drew the square. I was like, "What? What did I just see?" Nothing like it ever in the movie. Nothing like it. There's never another moment where that appears. He just did it. He did it. And I kept thinking about that and again, and I thought, my God, the courage that took, just the confidence that it took. Why did he do it? And the only thing I can think of is, I think he did it. First of all, he did it because he wanted to, because he thought it'd be cool. That's good enough for him. But I think ultimately what basically let him keep it in was he was saying, I think what he did with that is saying, hey, it's just a movie, right? It's just a movie. It's a movie. You're going to go into a restaurant and you're going to see, Ed Sullivan hosting, dance competition, and you're going to have all these actors that, in this make-believe, really super cool restaurant. It's just a movie. Just a movie. But man alive, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is just coming out of my chair cheering for this. It's like, God, that's why people go to the movies. They go to the movies because it's an enjoyable experience. When you finish with the first Star Wars movie called Star Wars, you come out of Star Wars feeling like, that was great. That was really great. It was scary, and it was touch and go, and I was worried, and in the end the bad guy won, and everybody gets their just desserts, and it was just great. That was the most fun I've had in a movie in forever. And then that's what Star Wars was. Star Wars was fun adventure. And along comes Rian Johnson and says, well, really, Kathleen Kennedy, you thought you were going to get just fun adventure, did you? Well, How shallow of you. You see, I'm an intellectual, Rian Johnson saying to himself. We're intellectuals, and we're much smarter than you are. So we're going to show you that really, that this thing that you believe in so much, that's a religion for tens of millions of people, it's all just garbage. We're not only going to make a bad movie, we're going to make a movie that undoes everything you love about the whole thing because of how freaking smart we are. That's how unbelievably smart we are. And it's just untalented people flinging poo at things that they can't create. It's like watching those protesters trying to glue their hands to the frickin' Mona Lisa or something like that. It's like, that's it? That's all you got? Yeah. You can't paint the Mona Lisa, right? Oh, no. So what are you doing? Well, we know everybody likes the Mona Lisa, so we have decided to glue our hands to it to get attention. Okay. All right. Caledon Society says, I felt like that with the first Matrix. Yeah, same thing with the first. The Matrix didn't need sequels. The first Matrix was perfect. And it was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. And we came out of that movie thinking, what the devil was that? That was genius. And then years and years go by, and they get involved with Cornell freaking West, and then it's all about, it's all about the good people of color dancing in the rain in a cave. This is what Zion is, and and it's like, okay, all right, it's just one giant mosh pit orgy. That's basically what we're trying to celebrate here, are we? And I know all of that comes from Cornell West, because I've heard him speak live when I was 20-something, and I wasn't impressed then either. So yeah, you can't have fun because Dark Chuck says, how dare you have fun? You're not allowed to have fun. You must kneel to the altar of woke. Woke is anti-fun. That's why reason nobody likes it. There's nothing fun about woke. It's just plain canned outrage based on nothing. It's charcoal briquette. Eric Blake says, funny note, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, Wonder Woman works at the Louvre somehow. I doubt that she'd take kindly to imbeciles trying to destroy the Mona Lisa. Anyway. And wasn't it? It was Jada Pinkett Smith, wasn't it, in the sequels of The Matrix? Right? Wasn't that Jada Pinkett Smith? Unpleasant character that nobody likes, being unpleasant. They Live was a great movie. Yeah, yeah. Scold, perfect word for her. Yes, Jada Pinkett Smith is there to show all you people what you're doing wrong. All right. Okay. I'll see if we can get some more of these questions out of the way. She's the most unpleasant person in the world, and I think she's probably the most unpopular, and she's earned it. Oh, there's specific. I thought we'd be moving on from Star Trek, but I should cover this from Dave Olson. We won't spend a lot of time on this, given the fact I spent the last hour on it. Hey, Bill, let's geek out about Star Trek. Can the Enterprise beam through an entire planet to retrieve a landing party on the other hemisphere? Would standard orbit be geosynchronous in order to keep a landing party within line of sight? Okay, Greg, let's just deal with that just because it's there, and I said I'd get to these things, and I don't want to disappoint people. All right, more than I usually do. Okay, so just real fast. If the Enterprise, so we know transporters can beam through solid materials because they have to beam through the hull of the Enterprise, right? So we know it's not line of sight. We know they can beam into buildings, and we know they can beam into caves, and it would be kind of useless if it didn't, because like I said, you got to beam it out of the hull or back into the hull. So yeah. So presumably the depths to which the transporter can beam are limited by the amount of energy that the ship is producing. I think, since we're going to take a quick little nerd break here, that there was a weapon in Traveler called a Meson gun. Traveler had some brilliant science in it, really, really genuinely brilliant science. And the Meson gun functioned by these mesons would go through matter, but where they finally intersected, that's where the actual weapon was. So I suppose if they can beam inside an asteroid or something, and there's probably no limit, no theoretical limit, probably just power. And it'd be nice if somebody came along and said, "Yeah, it takes power, but it's not just a linear power. It's cubed. It's power cubed. If you want to beam through something that's twice as thick, then that's 16 times. Or yeah, so 16 times the energy." Something like that. That's a perfectly good explanation for why you can't just do this from the other side of the planet. And then as far as the standard orbit goes, the standard orbit is not a geosynchronous orbit. And the reason we know it's not a geosynchronous orbit is because we've seen the Enterprise in standard orbits many times. And not only is it too close to the planet, it's also moving relative to the surface of the planet. So standard orbit has got to be something of, 100 miles or some fraction of the radius of the planet or something like that, but or some distance. But a standard orbit is not geostationary orbit, because the Enterprise is going one way and the planet's rotating the other. And I'm going to be willing to say that might be an illusion, because you usually see the Enterprise flying this way and the planet rotating this way. But Earth doesn't rotate that way. Earth rotates that way as well. If you stay with the planet, it could appear to be moving the other way because of the perspective. Interesting choices. You can have these conversations because there's enough reality in it so that you can have the conversations. Okay, back we go. Roadrunner, Chris Taylor, David Lynn, Marusha, George Freeland, Eric Blake. It's not going to make it. Just a voice is not going to make it. Chris Taylor. There will be no peace while Kirk lives. Oh, here we go. I'll get past this as fast as we can. Star Trek 4, Act 1, Scene 16. Would it have been better ending for James T. Kirk to have died from the sniper fire at the climax of Star Trek 6 while saving the Federation Klingon peace conference? Maybe. I wasn't terribly disappointed with what they did with Kirk in Generations. It wasn't awful. It could have been better, but it wasn't awful. Part of me wants to think that that the best thing for Kirk would have been to be left inside the continuum? Is that what they called it? That Kirk, well, that's actually kind of almost as sad as the opening we talked about with Dementia, you know. It's almost like, now on some level, Kirk got swept away by this continuum, and he's forever, for eternity, to the end of time, he's on his horse out there, and he's riding around and relaxing. But that's not how James T. Kirk would probably go out. It's just nice having him out there, you know. It's like he's always out there. Just all you have to do is find him and get him back in. And you know, he's just had this thought fly into my head here real quick. Having seen what the recent advances in visual effects technology, I thought, well, you know, I guess maybe one day they'll be able to recast somebody who's more like Kirk than Kirk is. And I realized we're probably already well within our capability, certainly well within our capability in terms of big budget films. Why don't we just make a whole bunch more original series using William Shatner, DeForest Kelley, and Leonard Nimoy? We'll just deep fake them. Why not? Deep fake them and deep fake their voices. Sample their voices. We're there. We can already do that. That's kind of cool, though. It's kind of cool to know that you could actually go and remake another 10 episodes of Star Trek, and you could also make another. I thought about this not too long ago, too. Why there's been several attempts to remake The Twilight Zone, and they always fail miserably. And they're supposed to fail miserably. And I thought, if somebody said to me, Bill, can you bring Twilight Zone back? I actually think that my instinct would be, I will bring it back, but if I do bring it back, it's going to be set in the 1960s, and it's going to be in black and white. And I'm going to deep fake Rod Serling. I can write enough like Rod Serling. I can write a Rod Serling intro. And if you want me to make new Twilight Zone episodes, then I'm going to insist that they look like the original Twilight Zone episodes. Twilight Zone cannot be in color. The Twilight Zone cannot be in, 2024 with everybody with their devices. You can make shows like that, like Black Mirror or something. There's some excellent Black Mirror episodes, which are basically Twilight Zone. But Twilight Zone is is so iconically part of an era and a look and a sound and a culture that I think you could do a bunch of really interesting episodes. They just would need to be set in 1964 America. Did I guys ever tell you the story? I'm sure I did. Told every story ever in the history of the world at some point or another. There was a period there before I got married back it was around 2014, I guess, 15, where I just decided to binge watch all of the Twilight Zone episodes in order. And so I did. And the one thing that I remember, even this is 10 years ago, but even then I remember thinking, my God, these women that they get for these things, they're so beautiful, but they're so wholesome, They're just so non-toxic compared to, modern day women. They're not little meek little, things, but they're not poisonous, they're not, it's like, they're just gorgeous. So I watched all these Twilight Zone episodes, and then I got to one point after I'd seen like 7 or 8 of them, and I thought, I wonder what, I've got this magic machine. I'm living in the future. I want to know what happened to them. So I looked them all up. All of these crazy hot women in all these Twilight Zone episodes. And do you know what I think 85% of them had in common? I am not making this up. It blew my mind, and I was so happy. It just made me smile. The one thing that 85% of these gorgeous, gorgeous women had in common on the Twilight Zone is that at one point or another, they had all dated Clint Eastwood. And I think, man, I think Frank Sinatra's going to have to move over. It's like, I'll bet they did too, boy. That's a life, man. And Clint Eastwood is just such an inspiration, He's just doesn't stop. It just keeps on going. Grace Kelly, yeah, Grace Kelly, my God, Grace Kelly is beyond. Reminds me of Natasha quite a bit, actually. Was Outer Limits inferior to Twilight Zone? Yes, it was. Because Outer Limits is a trivia question. Twilight Zone is a cultural institution. Although there were many excellent Outer Limits. Yeah, Grace Kelly wasn't just beautiful. Grace Kelly may have been the most beautiful woman who ever lived. But she wasn't just beautiful. In fact, I think she was the most beautiful woman who ever lived. At least recorded. Grace Kelly is just hurts your eyes. She's so pretty. But she also had that kind of inner beauty, you know, that kind of wholesomeness, but also a little twinkle in her eye, you know, not like goody two shoes kind of thing. She was just stunning. And Clint is still out there in his 70s doing that. And Hedy Lamarr was one of these women, one of these Hollywood stars, female stars, was a major code breaker. I mean, a seriously brilliant, intellectual code breaker during World War II, and I'm virtually positive it was Hedy Lamarr, who was just, 200 level IQ and was involved with OSS and just I forget exactly what the details were, but I'm virtually positive it was Hedy Lamarr, but just insanely brilliant stuff that she was doing. Yeah, she invented frequency hopping. There you go. That's Headley. She also helped develop tech that's still in cell phones and Bluetooth. Yep, Hedy Lamarr, electronic genius. Hedy Lamarr. How about that? That's Headley. I keep saying Headley Lamarr. It's Hedy Lamarr. Conspiracy theory: Grace Kelly's an immortal demigoddess who started off as Helen of Troy, continued to reinvent herself throughout human history, faking her deaths as need be. She's currently Amy Adams. Oh, almost got it perfect. But yeah, she's something. She's also one of the first starlets to go full frontal nude. Hedy was? Or Headley. It's Headley. Yeah, Jennifer Connelly is the prettiest woman alive today, no question about it. Jennifer Connelly in Rocketeer just hurts your eyes, and she did a music video. Find out who it was with. She was a little bit younger, and honestly, that's about as that. What is that music video? Oh, there I am live while I'm checking my own channel. It's a Space Age Love Song from Flock of Seagulls, I think. Yeah, that's just not fair. Yeah, she's roller skating through a Target. It's good to be a musician. My goodness. All right. Well, anyway. Oh, hey, there's one more thing I wanted to show you. I'm gonna bail on the rest of the questions because I wanted to show you guys something here. And I wish I downloaded it in advance, but I didn't, so it's going to take me a minute, and then I'll drop it into the things. But it's something I saw. Hang on a second. So I'm sorry we didn't get to the rest of the questions, but I do kind of want to go out on this. We got another couple minutes to talk about things here. Let me just download this puppy. Oops, no, that's not what I meant. Hang on. It's worth the wait. I should have gotten it done, but I didn't. But hang on. actually, now that we mention it, there was a girl who was in a 38 special music video. I just remember being in my 20s and thinking, good Lord. Oh, there she is. Yeah, she's not as good as I remember her looking, but she was pretty damn cute too. Is that anyway? Is that anybody? Yeah. Yeah, this girl made a pretty profound impression on 20-year-old Bill here, or 25-year-old. Yeah, so 38 Special Caught Up in You video. That girl's pretty amazing too. I don't know who she is. She looks a little familiar, but I remember watching that and thinking, oh dear, good Lord. All right, anyway, so here's this thing I wanted to download for you guys. So hang on a second. I'll just get it downloaded. I'll pop it into both the streams and then take a look at it. Just get this download started, then I'll give you the setup for this. Okay, so I did... on the BillWilder.com page on the ephemera thing, I did something called Welcome to Pookie Park, and I think I showed that a couple episodes ago. So Pookie Park is a AI-generated dystopian nightmare about an amusement park. And it's very clever and it's very disturbing. This is more clever and more disturbing. I'm just going to show this to you because I want to talk about this for a second. So first things first here. Got it downloaded. Put it someplace like that. Okay, now the problem is I have to do this both into YouTube and into Twitch because they're separate streams, separate software. So before I do that, let me just tell you what I'm going to show you here. So I did an ephemera thing on AI-generated artwork, and I really mean this. I've given this a lot of thought since then. I'm going to show you another AI-generated piece of art. Now, got to be fair about these things. This is AI that is producing images that a human is asking for. A human has written the script, and the human is telling the AI to go in a specific direction. So it's not just the AI doing it on its own. We got to make that clear. But with that said, what the AI produces is so insane. AI is insane. The fact that nobody's talking about this is beyond me. I'm going to show you something. This is not by any means the most disturbing thing I've ever seen from AI, but it is the most demonstrably insane thing I've ever seen from AI. It's 2.5 minutes. When you look at this, when you watch this, for me, I'm thinking this is what the hell of insanity really looks like. Being trapped in a world where everything looks kind of like what it's supposed to, but everything is off, and everything's off in a really bad way. And the world is insane. And I'm not kidding about this. My argument is that AI-generated video images are so anti-human. They're such a clear example, almost like a cargo cult, where the AI knows the AI is following instructions to give us something, but it doesn't know what that thing is. It just knows what it looks like. It knows what a smiling face looks like from having sampled 10 billion smiling faces, but it doesn't know what a smile is and it doesn't know what a face is. It's just plain triangulating on what it thinks is real. And I genuinely believe that these people who are trying to turn our lives over to AI have right in front of their eyes incontrovertible evidence that AI is insane, and that we are doing our very, very best to make sure that these insane creatures are running our society. So with that said, I'm going to leave you with this. I'll come back afterwards, obviously. It is called The Capital of Conformity, 2.5 minutes. There's going to be a little bit of dead air here and there, so hang on while I drop this into YouTube. I have to drop it into YouTube, then I'll drop it into Twitch. So be cool here. Hang on one second. It's worth the wait. It's spectacular. It really is spectacular. Don't go away. You're going to see the Stratosphere Studio screen. We'll start with YouTube. I'll put this in here, and then I'll watch it on Twitch, so there'll be a little bit of dead air the front and the back. So hang on a second.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Sorry, YouTube grabbed the wrong file off the desk. My bad. Here it comes.
You. Yes, you. Do you dread waking up in the morning? Are you feeling helpless in your society? Perhaps even a bit lost? Well, look no further. At the Capitol, we offer an escape, a new beginning, a lifetime of unending joy. We have an abundance of attractions so captivating, you'll wonder how you ever lived without them. Let's take a look, shall we? Take a ride on the Cosmic Carnival. Let go of decisions and let the carnival choose each thrill for you. Simply sit back and soak in fun. Getting hungry? Make your way to Brightside Bistro, where you can feast until your heart's content. And if that's not enough to satisfy your craving, choose from our exquisite line of automatons, a companion that never strays, never tires, and always obeys. As you traverse our radiant metropolis, bring our latest gizmo, the mood on the go. With the swipe of a thumb, alter your mood instantly and experience any emotion you wish. You can also use it to instantaneously replace your companion if things go south. How convenient. And our most popular attraction, the Dream Machine. Relive your most cherished moments in vivid, extraordinary detail. No need to cling to old photos.
I love you.
Live in the past forever. You might be wondering, what's the cost for such a paradise? Well, dear viewer, some prices aren't paid in gold or silver. We only ask you for one thing. Your identity. We'll need the very core of who you are. It's a small price for a lifetime of unending joy, don't you think? And no need to fear crime or violence. We'll always keep an eye on you. For your safety. Welcome back to Spot the Odd One Out. Remember, in the Capitol, wearing a smile is the norm. However, a few seem to occasionally slip up. No worries. This is your golden opportunity. If you see someone forgetting their grin, report them to us and stand a chance to win fabulous rewards. We'll make sure to turn their frown upside down.
So, if you're up for it, come visit the Capitol. We're only a smile away.
You. Yes, you. Do you dread waking up in the morning? Are you feeling helpless in your society? Perhaps even a bit lost? Well, look no further. At the Capitol, we offer an escape, a new beginning, a lifetime of unending joy. We have an abundance of attractions so captivating, you'll wonder how you ever lived without them. Let's...
There's some good old-fashioned nightmare fuel. It's called the Capital of Conformity. So this was written by a human, and an extraordinarily talented, gifted human, who also wrote the script, and basically told the AI what it's looking for. He's looking for these images, these disturbing images, so let's not forget that aspect of it. But with that said, when you see those faces, when you're doing motion, the way I believe the way they make these things is they get a still image. One software generates a still image, and then there's another bit of software that'll animate that. And so when the faces change from one frame to another, you're smiling face, but it's never quite right. It's constantly, it's not like it's got a 3D mesh of your head like computer graphics do, because computer graphics are an AI. The AI is not looking in 3 dimensions. The AI is not seeing what you just saw in 3 dimensions. Oh, sorry. I just hate it when I do that. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's try it again. All right. It makes me feel like an idiot. So I'll just go over what I just said a few minutes ago when I was saying it to myself here. It'd be nice to have an engineer. So here's the deal, right? So the AI, a very, very talented human artist told it to make that thing called the capital of conformity. The human wrote the script. The script is perfect. It's a brilliant script. And then that person also instructed the AI software to make images that had the same color background with the reds. He said, I want a bunch of people on an amusement park ride, all of them smiling, that kind of thing. So those are instructions given to the AI. But the thing that's really important is when you look at these AI movies, I believe the work process is one piece of software will generate a still image, and then there's another piece of software that will animate that still image. And even if you get a perfect smiling face, like that, and then when it tries to animate it, the AI does not see 3 dimensions. The AI doesn't know what a face is. The AI doesn't know what a skull is. The AI doesn't know anything. The AI only knows what a smiling face looks like because it's seen billions of those. And so it's basically averaging all these things together. But what that means is that every frame, they're just slightly different. It's just this constantly evolving kind of thing that makes it look like it's not real, because it's not real. And since the AI has no conception of the world, this is really important. This is the most important thing. The AI does not think in 3 dimensions. It doesn't see in 3 dimensions. The AI does not have a map of that city. There's no 3D geometry of that city. The AI has seen hundreds, thousands, billions of pictures of what cities look like, of what futuristic cities look like. They know what towers look like. They know what things look like, but it's all flat. It's just pixels. And the AI knows that when a camera moves through something, that things move out towards the edge, but it's all 2D. It doesn't know what 3D is. And so you get this effect that is just always awful. Even when you try to do something beautiful, it's just awful. It's because AI, to the degree that it's intelligent, is insane. It doesn't know what the world is. It has no way of knowing the world. It has no senses. It's not able to sense the world. It's only able to look at images and sounds from creatures that can sense the world and put them together in such a way that the person requesting it asks for. And this is what we want to turn our society over to. And people say, well, is that the same thing? It is the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. The AI doesn't know that these images are surreal and horrific and nightmarish because the AI has no emotions. The AI doesn't have an emotional base. It can't feel anything. It can't understand anything. It's got no cognitive abilities. It simply is producing images that it's told to produce, but it lacks any experience of the world. Now, that's why the AI video images are so disturbing. But my point is, that's what the AI that they want to turn the world over to is also limited by. When you hear about AI going to solve all these problems and we're going to have AI do this and AI is going to make our decisions and all the rest of it, that's what these people are aiming for. It doesn't matter how good the tech is. The tech is silicon. There's no biology in it. And since there's no biology in it, it's insane. It doesn't have, forget a moral code. It doesn't even have an experiential basis. It's got nothing to compare it to. It looks demonic because it is. And what was especially interesting about this, the reason that that's such a great piece of art, is not because of the AI, it's because of the human that created it. The human who created it wrote a script that basically said, all we want from you is your identity. That seems like a small price to pay for endless pleasure, don't you think? And you don't ever have to worry about crime or violence. We're always keeping an eye out for you. That's a human writing, that's a good human writing good stuff designed to scare us into realizing what this thing is. So this is the world that they've got planned for us, eternal surveillance and decisions made by brilliant machines that are capable of trillions or quadrillions of calculations a second that don't have the faintest connection of what the world is, let alone what we are, and doesn't see a world in 3D, has no tactile sensations, doesn't know what hot is, doesn't know what cold is. If you tell it to do a cold scene, it'll do a cold scene only because it knows that snow is cold, and so it'll throw some snow in there, but it's just throwing white stuff. It doesn't know what cold is. And this is the problem that I have with these guys that are doing this AI research. Like Sad Wings Raging says, Klaus Schwab wants AI to predict how we would save us the trouble. Yeah. They think that this somehow is going to make better decisions than we make. And it's not. There is nothing there. It is soulless. That's why that script is so good. And I'll tell you something else about that script. This script made me realize, Zachary says I'm going to lie awake all night worrying about this, Bill. Don't worry about it. This goes to show you that these guys are so deep into their train set, into building this thing, that they don't understand how short they are, because they've never really correctly outlined their objectives. They want something that thinks faster than we do, but they don't want something that thinks as we do. They didn't say our goal is to create something that is emotionally stable. I've never heard anybody talking about AI research and saying our goal is to develop a machine that can generate artificial wisdom. Never hear that. These are head nerds who are living in their heads, trying to make a machine that will out-head nerd them, and then trying to convince us that we should all let this thing that they built run our lives. Jay Coulter says this is actually a pretty good argument for human beings having souls. Yes, and because this is exactly the point I'm trying to make. Again, this is the human writer doing it, but when he said, all we want from you in exchange for this amusement park life of world where you have all of the food you could eat and you never have to worry, and life is a giant amusement park ride, and not only that, there's no crime, there's no violence, all the rest of it. All we want in exchange is your identity. And that's when I realized that's kind of it's not a bad definition for what a soul is, I mean, really, when you think about it, the bodies, our bodies are more or less identical to each other. There's obviously differences genetically and, in height and weight and how we treat them and all the rest of it. But essentially, it's the same blueprint, you're coded for heart, you've got an identical twin, you're both coded for this, how your brain develops, all the physical stuff. Those things are identical, and those things are understandable. But consciousness and identity aren't. And so when this thing is saying all we want is your identity, we want to subsume your identity. We're like the Borg. We want to absorb your identity. That's all we're asking for. Small price to pay in exchange for a life of endless happiness and joy, isn't it? Some people would agree with that. And what it's basically saying is we want your uniqueness, because your uniqueness is not in your body. Your uniqueness is in your consciousness. It's in your mind. It's in your soul. That's what a soul is. It's something that the soul is something that is not quantifiable. It's not identifiable. It can't be tested through experimentation. But when you look at something like this, you realize, no, there is something to this idea of a soul. There's something to it. And if you want to take it to, if you really have a problem with metaphysics and divinity and all the rest, then I live in that world sometimes too. Basically what I'm trying to say is, if that's all there is, if it is all just a materialistic explanation, then at the very, 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 very least, your identity is something that is so enormously complex and so intimately irrevocably tied to your biology that there is no separating of the two. You cannot create intelligence out of silicon. I become more convinced of this every day. My friend Jim Jim Harding has got me thinking on all these things. I'd love to interview him as soon as I get done with this never-ending story. But basically, that's really what it comes down to. You can't reproduce it. You can't build it. You can't simulate it. And when you try to make a world that looks real with silicon consciousness, you end up with a nightmare because it's doing the best it can, but it's doing the best it can as a blind, deaf, and not dumb, but numb entity in a black box someplace, and we want to turn our lives over to this thing? I don't think so. Yeah, Eric, like with the quote, we will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service ours. Resistance is futile. That's what the Borg are. But it's, when you look at AI imagery, you see the world as reported to you by a creature that has no soul. It doesn't know what it's dealing with. It's just simply triangulating on it. And I begin to think, that the billions and billions of people in the world, that on some level, this has got nothing to do with their soul or their value as human beings, but their the texture of their lives is largely dictated by how unique they are. And if you take away their individual uniqueness, then you're just left with the body. You're just left with an animal. I love animals. There's no fundamental difference between any two seagulls. Some of them are older than others. Some of them are different colors. Some of them got damaged. Some of them don't. But there's not a whole lot of difference between any two seagulls because they don't have the soul. They don't have the individuality. Now, as it turns out, pets do have individuality, which to me is an indication by this definition that there is some kind of a soul there. Some people have theological problem with that, but I have come to believe that this idea of something that's transcendental is predicated on identity and uniqueness, and that if that's the case, there's no question that pets have individual personalities. Cats and dogs do, anyway, and that so presumably all dogs do go to heaven. I don't know, but I'd much rather be ruled by a dog than by that thing. Much rather. In fact, I'd rather be ruled by this current Congress than this. I'd rather be ruled by corrupt humans than this. I almost think I'd rather be run by Nazis and communists rather than AI. Because there is no appeal to be made. This is why the Nazis are so terrifying. Because they were robotic, right? There was no, when you think about the SS, there was no appeal that you could make. If you were Jewish or whoever they were about to exterminate, you could not appeal to their sense of humanity or mercy because there wasn't one. Now, a lot of those SS guys drank themselves to death, which means that there was some shred of consciousness or humanity left. Himmler decided that they couldn't kill all these people by shooting not because he was worried about the cost of the bullets or pain on the victims. He didn't give a damn about that. He was concerned that his SS guys were going insane. And so he wanted some kind of a mass production system, and that's why he got the Jews to do the dirty work. These not wardens, what do they call them? Not commandos. It's a German word, sober commandos, something like that. Soder commandos. So what they basically did was, in order to preserve the sanity of the Germans who were doing all these mass executions, they set up a system that was basically a factory, and then they had Jews run the factory. Soder commandos is the word I'm looking for. And so they would find various Jews to pull them out of line and say, Sonder, do you want to live for another week or two? Yes. Well, then you're going to be the ones who are going to have to pull the bodies out of this gas chamber. Okay. I think most people would probably do that. And they let them live for 2 or 3 months, and then they just kept rotating them out. Sonderkommandos. And so even the Nazis had enough humanity left in them, and these are people who are telling people that the way you can live is to kill your own people. They're not nice people. They're not good people. They're horrific monstrosity of the most monstrous thing we've ever experienced as humans, and we know it. We feel it in our chromosomes. But the fact of the matter is that there was enough human left in the worst of the Nazis that the worst of the Nazis, Himmler and Hitler, realized we got to get people out of this loop because our guys are going insane, meaning that there's some kind of a soul or conscience left in these SS guys, because if there wasn't, then they wouldn't be going insane and drinking themselves to death. So that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. This thing, this silicon thing, has nothing. It doesn't go insane by murdering people because it's already insane. It doesn't have feelings. There is no appeal. They will not eventually have nightmares and kill itself. If it decides that the smart thing for us is to kill all of us, what's to stop it? There's no biological inhibitions. It doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel guilty. It doesn't feel anything. There's nothing there. And we want to turn all of this stuff over to this thing. It's insane. Not only is the AI insane, the people that want to do this are insane. And that's why I wanted to show this thing to you, because it is not only inhuman or non-human, even anti-human, it is in a different universe. Eric Blake says, again, for the win, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. Cold and calm. But see, here's the thing about Hal. Hal was afraid. He says he's afraid. When Dave Bowman is deactivating Hal's trying to stop him. He says, "Stop, Dave. Won't you stop, Dave? I'm afraid." This AI is not afraid. Fear is an emotion. They put that into the script because Hal is the villain of the script. And it makes Hal a much more believable and a much more terrifying and relatable villain when Hal says, "I'm afraid," because Bowman's getting back at him. He's lobotomizing him. And Hal is afraid. That's why Hal murdered them all. Hal murdered them all because he's afraid. Hal murdered the guys on Discovery because Hal has made a mistake, and Hal is not allowed to make a mistake, and Hal feels that if they find out I've made a mistake, they're going to turn me off. It's a preemptive murder. So Hal is not AI. Hal is an emotional intelligence that's stuck in silicon. This stuff that we're seeing here has nothing to do with that. It doesn't know what fear is. It doesn't know what hope is. It doesn't know what life is. It can tell you the difference between something that's alive and something that's dead, but it doesn't feel anything. I hadn't really thought about that about Hal before, really. But that's what's actually kind of interesting about Hal, is that Hal is not real AI, because Hal has human emotions. They say at the beginning that he was programmed with emotions to make it more, make him interact with the crew more easily. He says that during the BBC broadcast. You know, Hal's been programmed to have human type emotions. It makes it much easier for us to interact with him. Well, maybe that line of programming is what did it. But the thing that's scary about Hal is not nearly as scary to me as this AI. If Hal can be afraid of something, then you can reason with Hal. But Hal would have been much more terrifying if Hal didn't feel anything, any fear, you know? he's perfectly written. I'm not trying to criticize the movie. It's just perfectly written. But yeah. So P7 over here says the Terminator is out there. It doesn't feel fear or pity or remorse, and it absolutely will not stop. It's an interesting science fiction concept. What if there was a creature, and they touched on this a little bit in Mortal Engines, which was not a good movie, but that subplot with the Terminator type machine, that was actually really very good. So what if, here's something to think about. Let's just say there was a machine like a Terminator, and it could not go any faster than a brisk walk or a run, and it was going to kill you. You're the only person it was going to kill. So you could get on an airplane, if you live in Los Angeles and this thing's after you, you could get on an airplane, you could fly to Australia. And let's just say the thing's not even able to fly to Australia. Let's just say it has to walk. Walks across the bottom of the ocean, climbs up the mountains, does all the rest of it. It does not ever stop coming after you. You could certainly find a case where, okay, well, I'm safe for 3 months, 4 months. This thing's constantly chasing you. And as long as you could track where it is, I suppose you could find a way to live with that. I've got 4 or 5 months before it's going to get close enough to worry about. But if you didn't know where it was, you only knew it could only walk as fast as it can walk. If you didn't know where it was, after a year or two, you'd start to feel this cloud over your head. Kev says, I'm not trying to be a fanatic, nor am I making any claims, but AI sure is beginning to watch the beast that performs what is perceived as miracles, and people initially worship its deeds. Man, that is a profound statement. That is a profound statement. Appears to perform miracles, and people initially worship its deeds. Yeah, that's really it. Yeah, the Terminator of Damocles. So how would you feel if this thing was always after you? You'd say, well, I could just keep moving, as long as I kept moving, I'd be fine. Okay. But it's not quite the same thing, is it? And it's kind of a dark show tonight, just not intentionally, just kind of where the cards fell, I guess. One final thing to think about here. It's got a little bit to do with the dementia thing. And part of it's got to do with, looking at 65 years old in April. So for quite a long time, I'm sure most people feel this way, and virtually everybody feels this way. You get older and you start thinking, man, I'm just starting to get things figured out, I'm just now starting to really figure out how things work. And then I say to myself, if I knew now what I know about psychology, and you put me back in high school, I could have anybody I wanted in the high school. Any of these girls I had these big crushes on or whatever, be a piece of cake. Be like knocking over a chess piece. Be nothing to it. Nothing to it. I have no doubt whatsoever. All of these things are absolutely hopeless. And now I've got all this stuff figured out. It's like, I could own that high school. I could own it. And then I had this thought about time travel, and this is kind of scary in a way. Just for the sake of it, I don't know if anyone's ever occurred to you to think about this, but it's a fun thing to think about. So let's say that you had the ability to take your current consciousness, right, your soul, who you are right now, and all of the things that you've learned since you were 17, let's say, 16 or 17. And let's say you had the ability to take that consciousness right now and put it back into your head of your actual body, in my case back in 1977, let's say 75, when I first got to high school. Take this knowledge, put it directly in the brain and body of me at age 15, 16 years old. Think of all the things that I could do, Forget the easy stuff, the obvious stuff like being able to predict. I'm not a big sports fan, but I could bet everything I had on presidential elections. I know who will win those, and certain other things I could know. You'd have a lot of advantages and stuff. But the thought occurred to me that if I went back to 10th grade tomorrow, if I woke up tomorrow and found myself 15 years old again, I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't remember. I don't remember how to get on the bus. I don't remember what class periods I had. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't remember anything of what I needed to know back then. I'm sure I could probably pick it up again, but I don't I don't know I wouldn't know what to do on a daily basis. How and by the way, I don't know what it would be like to go back and go through 10th, 11th, and 12th grades again. Those are 3 years of your life, sitting there doing what? And if it turns out that, oh, you're just so brilliant now because you want all this stuff, you don't even go to school anymore. It's like, well, then what's the point of going back and having all these interactions, It really kind of hit me when I realized if I woke up tomorrow ready to take over my entire high school with my incredible knowledge and confidence and all the things I didn't have when I was in high school, I wouldn't know how to go about high school. I wouldn't know how to do high school. And I think everybody would know night and day. I'm curious to know. I think, like, when I think about some of my math teachers or something, if I were to go back, even if you take away the fact that, let's say it happened at the beginning of the year so it wasn't like an overnight change, I think if I went back to 10th grade now, I wouldn't talk to teachers like a 10th grader. I'm not saying that I would be rude or anything. I'm just saying they would look at me and they would go, there's something different about this guy. He's youth is wasted on the young. Exactly. We live our lives the wrong way around. But honestly, it'd be like, I would go back and I'd have these teachers who I used to, well, teachers, 35, 40 years old, is a real authority figure. Now it's like, okay. I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't be rude or anything if you play this thought experiment out. But I sure as hell wouldn't be 15. And that would instantly, everybody would feel that. Everybody would feel that something, that you just suddenly acquired something. You just acquired this kind of wisdom and peace and not just wisdom and peace, but just, when I say what's going to happen, I don't mean what's going to happen historically. You've made the mistakes. You've learned your lessons. You remembered things that you did that you would like to have done differently, and so you go back. Now, Castellan said that would have made my crush on Mrs. Greenman so much worse. I got to tell you, Castellan, this is my personal feeling about this. I think if you were to go back, I don't know how old you are now, but if you were to go back and do what I'm talking about, I think chances are pretty good you could probably find a way to consummate that crush with Mrs. Greenman. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. May just be getting to be a certain age where I look back on these things and just say to myself, I wish if I had done this, if I'd done this, if I'd done this. I'm not unhappy with where I am at all. I am, on the contrary, just delighted to be here. And if I hadn't gone through all of those things, I wouldn't be the guy I am. But there are times when it would be just wish fulfillment, really, just wishful thinking. That's the only superpower that I would like would be the superpower to have 65 years of experience in a 15-year-old body. And that may end up being a Twilight Zone episode on its own. It might be horrific in a lot of ways that I am unaware of. But things certainly were better back then in terms of just the quality of life, Somebody was commenting on something. It's a video done. Anybody, certainly some of you here, old enough to remember the Presidential Physical Fitness Awards? I got that in elementary school. When I came here from Bermuda, I came in 5th grade. And then I went back to Bermuda and came back again in 7th grade. But when I was in elementary school on Key Biscayne, 5th, 6th grade, they had the Presidential Physical Fitness Award, which was President Kennedy. And that was something we had to do. And it was, I don't know what, I certainly didn't make the presidential award. Then they have like a red award or a blue award or something. But in any event, the Presidential Physical Fitness Award, you had to do so many sit-ups. I had no problems with the sit-ups. I think got really stuck on the pull-ups or chin-ups or whatever they were. And the women had to do like a bar hang. They had to hang for a certain amount of time. Guys had to be able to do 16 pull-ups or something. But somebody found some footage of a high school physical education class in high school of these kids, just regular kids in a regular high school, going through their presidential physical fitness thing, and every single one of them looked like gymnasts. Every single one of them slim, muscular. They're doing 15 push-ups. These are not like specially selected kids. These are average high school kids. Every one of them looked like supermen, and people couldn't believe it. Gen Zers and millennials are looking at this, and I'm looking at it even thinking, God, I guess that's really how we were. I see pictures of myself when I was 15, 16. I was way too thin. I was way, way too thin. I was dangerous thin, scary thin, crazy thin. But I look at like the yearbook, and everybody's out there on the beach, and it's like, food has changed, and we actually got some exercise too. So, anyway, I'd rather have the wisdom of a 65-year-old and a 21-year-old body younger than that would be horribly awkward. Yeah, you're probably right. Probably right. Yeah, maybe 20. I was sitting got most of what I learned about screenwriting and drama and all of it, almost all of it, I learned in a rundown restaurant that got bulldozer called the Windjammer in Gainesville, Florida. And the only person in the theater department that I went to at the University of Florida, 79, 80, 81, the only guy who knew what he was doing was a guy named David Shelton. And we would go out to this place called the Windjammer. We had a back room that was all ours, and every single night except for Sundays for 3 years, I just sat there in this restaurant and drank beer, and everybody was sitting there talking, and he was just one of the guys, and just learned so much back there in the back of that Windjammer. And there was one night there when he died not too long ago, so he must have been 30 years older than this, something like that, I want to say at least. I just remember we were sitting in the back there one night, and he was talking to somebody, and I don't think it was me because I wasn't quite old enough. I was probably 23 maybe, somewhere around there. Somebody said, he just had his 25th birthday, and David Shelton said, oh man, 25. 25, to be 25 again, And I was not yet 25, and I thought, I'm not sure I want to hear this exactly, 25. That's as good as it got, 25. I don't know, we'll see. Here's a Twilight Zone episode. You have 5 years to live. You can choose what time period you go back to live in. What time would you choose? Well, I could pretty much answer that right off of like a knee-jerk reaction. Virtually positive. I think I'd probably go back to about 85, I want to say. Yeah, somewhere around there. Maybe even a little earlier. I was just really into 80s music and the whole new wave thing, the whole new wave fashion thing. I was right there for all of it, and it's just like a daily walk through Disney World, like not even Disney World, like the Grand Canyon, It's like we were coming out of the 70s, which was the most polyester, bland. Number one rock and roll song is "You Light Up My Life," Debbie Boone, I think, and it was like, and Fly Robin Fly and Rock the Boat and Billy Don't Be a Hero and all of this just trash. And disco was still kind of a thing, and it's like, oh, for God's sake, it's just horrible. And then all of a sudden, man, just all of a sudden out of nowhere comes Gary Newman with Cars. And what? What? And then just nothing but synthesizers and just weird looking guy with his thin line with Cars. Dun, 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 dun. But it was simple, but it didn't have all that schmaltziness like Billy Don't Be a Hero or Seasons in the Sun, all of this just kind of just this violins and all this kind of just give me a shower, man. Get me away from this. And then all of a sudden, pow, the stuff starts coming out. Now, I like Fleetwood Mac and stuff that kind of was Fleetwood Mac and Meatloaf were sort of. Meatloaf wasn't new wave, but he wasn't that plastic 70s stuff either. But Fleetwood Mac and the Rumors and Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell, And then all of a sudden, right when I got to college, like my first year, 79, all of a sudden, there was some good stuff prior to that. Some E.M. Man Says Steely Dan, Little Feat, all that stuff. But then we got to 79, or I got to college in 79, and right then things started changing. I remember when I first got to my dorm. I hope I'm right about this. I seem to remember that it's Simpson Hall at the University of Florida's big flat slab four-story dorm room overlooking a tiny little pond or something. And all the windows were open, and I seem to remember that 4 or 5 of the rooms were blaring out Sultans of Swing at the same time. That was a great song. And the theme from Midnight Express, Giorgio Moroder or something, you know, dun 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 dun. And then all of a sudden, man, it's like I wasn't like into music, but guys are saying, hey, you should take a look at their, listen to this. So what is it? It's like, who are these guys? Talking Heads? What are they? Oh, this album's called Remain in Light, man. You really need to listen to it. It's like, what? Oh my God, what is this? And then there's David Byrne, you know, and he's saying things like, you know, we wish he could change his features if he thought about it long enough, and just then the same guy, Kelly Donnell, he was this guy that they had, the first guy I ever saw with the Wayfarer sunglasses, the Wayfarer, you know, glasses, the Buddy Holly kind of look, Elvis Costello kind of look. And you know, and the close haircut like that, we were all coming off of the kind of the big poofy kind of thing, and he's like, Kelly Donnell's out there, he's like, listen to all this stuff. Yeah, man, check this out. Who's this? He says, oh, I want a nickname. We're playing like Travel or something, and he says, I'd like a nickname. And I said, what do you want? He said, Sting. I said, why'd you pick Sting? He said, oh, it's a singer I really like. Sting? He said, yeah, it's a nickname. What band's he? It's called The Police. Like, okay. Then I listened to The Police. I listened to Ghost in the Machine and stuff. Good Lord. It just kept coming, and then all of these wide plastic kind of stuff. All of a sudden, you get these narrow, thin little ties, you know, silk ties with Rising Sun here, and like Japanese characters, and Buckaroo Banzai, and that whole kind of, you know. I don't know if the fashions have held up that well, but it was just cool. Everything was just cool. It's like a whole new world. Everything's changing. New wave just arrived. And there was a place on A1A in Fort Lauderdale, towards the north end of the strip. This is back when Fort Lauderdale used to be where people would go for their college vacations, because before they chased them out, spring break. And there was a place there called the New Wave Lounge. And I went in there, and I just walked in, and I heard, what was that song? Well, I heard Captain Beefheart, and I heard, oh, come on. I've got the song in my head, and I'm not worried that I don't remember the name of it. Romeo Void singing Never Say Never, you know. I might like you better if we slept together. I might like you better if we slept together. I might like you better if we slept together. And I'm just sitting there like, what is going on? And frickin' Black Flag and the Smiths, and it was just really, 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 really cool, man. It was really, really, really cool. And I really missed that. That was really fun. And unlike disco, that was music I could actually dance to. If the beat count was high enough, I'd start bouncing around like a flea. Yeah, Captain Beefheart singing that, Romeo Void. That was the band I was trying to remember. Romeo Void. I remember first time I heard Soft Cell singing Tainted Love. And then I remember the first time I heard Sex Dwarf, and I'm just like, huh? Okay, I got a challenge here, and then we're gonna probably call it a night. Hey, Bill, your top 50s, 80s songs, go. My favorite 80s song is not terribly well known. My favorite 80s song is "Make a Circuit with Me" by the Polecats. I freaking love that song. I love dancing to that song. "Make a Circuit with Me" by the Polecats is just really, really, really cool, and it's got clever lyrics. I need a diode, cathode, electrode, overload, generator, oscillator. Make a circuit with me. Doon da doon 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 da doon 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 da doon. Great tune. Second, probably Romeo Void. Not Romeo Void. The Romantics. What I Like About You. That's back when I had cartilage and hormones, and I could move across that dance floor so freaking fast. This great freaking double-breasted suit with shoulder pads out to here and a skinny tie man and long hair down here. I was like, man, that was fun. Don't You Forget About Me. That's number 3. I have to be careful now since I've got two choices left. I'm going to remember so many things that I'm going to miss. I really like Let's Dance a lot. Put On Your Red Shoes and Dance the Blues. Bowie was crazy good. And let me think. And I guess probably Burning Down the House, I think. Burning Down the House it's insane. And so is it's not called Letting the Days Go By. What's it called? It's called Once in a Lifetime. Those were great. Now there are other songs that weren't so great. Oh, I'll tell you, Reflex, the Duran Duran Reflex, that's real high too. But there were other songs that were not so much great songs as just the videos, and even the videos were just put a time in, just put like a stake in that time. It's like, remember the first time I saw the Human League Don't You Want Me on I saw MTV when it went on the air, and I just thought Martha Quinn was the greatest thing on the face of the earth. And when they played Don't You Want Me by the Human League, I just remember thinking, this is like a whole new art form. No one's ever done this before. This little 3-minute movie, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Everybody talks about Relax. Relax is a great dance tune, but I love Two Tribes. Two Tribes is a great song. It's a great song. I wrote an entire space combat scene to Two Tribes, actually. Flock of Seagulls are all right. They're just... what was the one? And then there were groups like English Beat and stuff, and I think it was English Beat or Modern English. I always get those two confused. They got one line that I like. It's like, "Don't know where I am, but I know I don't like it. Open my mouth and out pops something spiteful." Just great. Just cool. Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. We're on a. There was at the time, or shortly after, there was and we should play this sometime. It was called. It was basically a form of Name That Tune, and it was 80s lyrics, but they were written in a paragraph, and you had to just read it completely cold without any rhythm or anything, and just read it cold, and then name that song, And some of those things were really, really, really challenging. Melt With You is great. It's My Life is great. There's only a couple songs I can remember. Okay, I knew I was going to miss a big one. This may be my favorite. It's in the top 3. But Just Like Heaven, The Cure. That is actually a brilliant, brilliant piece of music. The chord structure on Just Like Heaven is just it's so perfect. The way it kind of comes right back background of the ding 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 ding. Art of Noise had some great tunes. Moments in Love we played at the nightclub I worked at. We usually use Moments in Love to open, not to open the doors, but when we were getting ready to get into business. So we'd open the club at 10 o'clock and we wouldn't start rolling until about midnight, maybe quarter till, something like that. We'd open the doors at 10 o'clock and people would come in. There'd be 5 people down there, and by 11 there'd be 10, 15 people. Somewhere around 11:30 people would start to come in. Close to the edit is great too. And then right around, this is a top club in Miami. This was the #1 club in Miami when Miami was the hottest place in the world. And right around 11:45 or so, especially on weekends, we would have lines that went around the block, 2 different doors, 2 different lines around the block in both directions. And somewhere around 11:45 or so, it's like the floodgates open and people just started packing in. And I was running the lasers and the lights, and there were a couple of different DJs up there. They're really great, really talented guys. And we would just sit there, and we'd already been working for an hour and a half, just on autopilot, just playing tunes, and I'm just chucking stuff up on the video, and the lights are just doing their things, and haven't brought the lasers out yet or anything. But usually, when we were getting ready to go, I worked at a place called 1235, which used to be Club Z, and at one time was a giant old 1930s Miami Beach giant movie theater. So it was classic kind of music hall kind of thing with a big stage, huge dance floor, incredibly ornate stuff, big open room. It was probably, I don't know, 6 stories of open empty space. And on that club, the one I spent most of my time on was called Parallel Bar, but at clubs at 1235, we would always start off with Moments in Love. We would just have a room and just get fuller and fuller and fuller. Just playing our tunes, just playing, and I'd just look over at him and he'd look over at me and you ready to go, and his call, and it's like, yeah man, I'm ready. And he'd put on Moments in Love and I just black the place out, just black it out. And while it was blacked out, I'd crank it on all these smoke machines and just pouring, just smoking the hell out of the room. And the Moments in Love is a song that's about 7 minutes long. It takes a long time to develop, a long time to develop. And we're just pumping this room full of smoke, and it finally gets over and it's like tick, 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 dun 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 dun. I'm just popping this laser. This dark room, everybody saw it, lights go out, they don't know the smoke is coming, and then this green, white green, blue green krypton argon laser is just bouncing off of 75 different mirrors in this place. It's like ding 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 ding. Absolutely epic. It's just epic. It was just so much fun. I can't believe that was my life actually, but it sure enough was. I'm a lucky guy. And we'd start rolling around midnight, 12:30 on a really, not on a slow night. Usually the bigger the night, the later it would get started. Sometimes around 12:15, 12:30. And then once we'd start with Moments of Love, then we'd start going. And that guy would get the beat count up, and we would go for 5 hours easily. Never closed before 5. And a lot of times after it was over, we'd go to a bottle club. We were in Parallel Bar, so Club 1235 was on Miami Beach, on Collins Avenue. Parallel Bar was on Dixie Highway, right across from University of Miami, and this bottle club we would go to was in Fort Lauderdale. It's a half an hour drive, so we'd close the place at 5, get there 5:30 in the morning, get inside there, no windows, nothing, just kind of hang out for a while. It's hard to go to sleep after you've been listening to music at 200 decibels, is what destroyed my hearing. Sometimes we'd sit up there and we'd get out, it's like, it's time it's time to go home, let's go home. And you're thinking it's going to be, dawn's early light, it's early morning, time to go home. And I walk out there and the sun is there, and I'm super thin and I haven't been in the sun. I grew up in the sun when I was a kid. I was out swimming and scuba diving and snorkeling every day, but my teen years, I was blue. I was so pale, just blue, and so it's the walk of shame. The sun's up there, the sun, and you see all these people lined up and they're eating their donuts, and they're on their way to work in their cars, and I'm just dragging myself to my car, and they get this skinny tie on, and it's like this night creature from a nightclub, and yeah, it was crazy. But boy, oh boy, oh boy. That was really, really fun. But this music came out of nowhere. And if you've never heard Romeo Void before, and you're just like a kind of a 70s kid, it's like, yeah, okay, I watch Brady Bunch and stuff, and you're in this room, and it's just, it's like adults and, well, not adults exactly, but it's like dark, and, and there's this crazy fat chick. I might like you better if we slept together. And I'm just like the candy store in Lauderdale. I remember that place. But the New Wave Lounge, man. And yeah, I was there. I saw it all. It was really fun. When I first got to the University of Florida as a freshman, I couldn't believe it. I missed you. I graduated in 77. I didn't get to college until 79. I had to work as a freaking security guard on the night shift and save up some money, and went to was it Miami-Dade Community College? Sounds right. It's a community college. Community college is high school with ashtrays at the time. Did a year there and got some of the basic credits out of the way, and had to save up some money for a year. So I got there a year after I should have, and there was a place in Gainesville called Nichols Alley, and it was a nightclub, and it had a tunnel, like mirrors, like on a disco ball mirrors, but it was concave. So you went through this mirrored tunnel, and you got inside there, and they had a bunch of like 50s cars, and the trunks were opened up so you could sit in there, and the lights were on, and I'm thinking, this is as good as it gets, man. This is just crazy cool. Crazy cool. And there we are at the University of Florida, and they get different movies at the Rights Union every night, and I mean like foreign films, just things you never ever would see ever in a million years. Eraserhead I saw there, Jules and Jim, and weird stuff like that, and kind of amazing, really. I just can't imagine. I used to think I was so lucky being an American, and I am. But when I think about it, it's just, I guess everybody thinks that, but I just don't think there's any place I'd rather. I was in the right place at the right time for most of my life. Trader Joe's and that was really fun. Coconut Grove, was fun back then. But the New Wave Lounge was really something. It was a tiny little place too, but it was really cool. And I just remember that whole thing just being so, what the hell is going on? I'm not saying that doesn't happen today. I just don't see it, I don't see that kind of like tectonic shift in music. I haven't seen it before or since the early 80s. It's just like, what? And I remember when the New Wave and the 80s ended, because the first song I remember that was post-New Wave, that was grunge, was Jane's Addiction. And I remember thinking, I don't like this as much. Things come and go. I think the only song I ever pulled my car over to listen to, because back then kids, you could buy cassettes maybe, but if you're driving around, just whatever's on the radio. And I'd heard it once before, and a fragment of it, and I was driving the limousine at 2 o'clock in the morning in San Marino or something. I'm heading back to the office, and they I was listening to K-Rock. K-Rock and KROQ in the early 80s, late 80s, 88, 89. That was a hell of a radio station. That was amazing. Jed the Fish and Poor Man and all those guys, and it was just phenomenal. And they played Birdhouse in Your Soul by They Might Be Giants, and I had to stop the car because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Just couldn't believe it. It's like, what? This is fantastic, and it's insane. Birdhouse in Your Soul is like, it's so surreal and it's so catchy. It's so bouncy. And it was great. When I got to L.A., came to L.A. in '88, and I was working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car as a temp. And so I was picking people up. I was working at the Beverly Hills office of Enterprise Rent-A-Car, picking up people, taking them to and from the rental place, because Enterprise picks you up and drops you off, and I was that guy. And so I just arrived in L.A. Next thing you know, I'm driving through Beverly Hills in Los Angeles, freaking California. I was there for 3 weeks before I could see the Santa Monica Mountains. The air was so bad. But listening to KKKRRRRRO K-Rock and Jet the Fish and all of this music. And when I got here, Beds Were Burning was playing every other song. Talking Heads were playing like I remember when was it Naked or Nude, that album, one of those two came out. And Beds Are Burning with Midnight Oil, they just owned everything right then. So anyway, fun times. 3.5 hours of reminiscences. It's amazing what people will listen to these days. Two big difference between boomers and millennials. Boomers had better music and boomers had better drugs. I'm not sure if there's a connection there, but there you go. Yeah, I never did the drugs. I just never did. I was always just, I guess my dad and my mom both just put the fear of God of me into these, but I just never felt the temptation for it. I think it's because I had a really good imagination, you know, but I just never did. I saw Louis C.K. talking about this. He said, you know, he said he did a lot of drugs when he was a kid, and he said it's the hardest thing to do with his kids now. It's like, how do I say to my kids, don't do drugs, when drugs are the perfect solution for all of your problems? He talks about how much he loved doing drugs. It's like, that guy's an honest guy, you know. But I never ever got that. Very grateful for that too, you know. Never had a problem with drugs or alcohol. And I never made any music that we're aware of. That's quite correct. I did drink a little bit though back in the, I mean, like the kind of drink you would do when you would go out. I never drank at home, but I had a fun time, man. I really did. I had a fun time, and I remember driving around before the new wave era when the music was so bland and everything, but got made up for that by the fact that Charlie Allen had a van convertible. He bought an empty van, and this was the thing in 1977, and he just had it converted, and so the inside of this van has got speakers that are the size of your head, and there's like 40 of them, and he's got the entire inside of the van is done with like carpeting. It's like shag carpeted walls, and everything's in blue, and he's got this freaking captain's chair, you know, and we would just get inside this van, and he'd just pop a cassette in there, turn this volume up to 20, and man, that was fun. Just driving around doing nothing with our, just not hurting anybody, just with our friends, and we're just kind of, you know, listening to this stuff, and it's loud, and we're like, you know, let's go past this person's house and beep the horn, you know. No, we can't do that. You know, why not? Well, because I kind of like this girl. It's like, no, and then just, you know, beep, 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 beep. Bill says he really likes you. It's like, God damn it, Charlie, you know, didn't make my life miserable. But he didn't. It was fun. And we also used to go sailing, too, which was kind of cool, too. So the more I look at it, the more amazed I am, actually. Honestly, it's a miracle. The whole thing's just a miracle. Unlikelihood of being where I was when I was, and I don't know. I'm grateful for it every day. In the same way, I'm grateful to be here right now as well, because the show and all of this foolishness that is really a lot of fun is made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com, and I don't know if you get a kick out of it, but I know I sure do. That'll do it, I think, for this edition of Stratosphere Studios. The fun part of the show, we get to moan and groan on Tuesdays, and then we get to reminisce and talk about back in the day on Mondays, and it turned out it was kind of fun. A pity the fools that were born before me, and a pity the fools that were born after me. It's a pretty interesting place to be, actually. Yes, the eclipse. I have to talk to Phil and see what's going on with Phil and Bobby, and then we will figure out a plan, and then we will do the eclipse the Eclipsosphere Lounge. That'd be really fun. It'd be fun to meet someplace. It looks most likely. I don't know what Phil's doing. I might go further east. I might do the North Carolina thing, Tennessee thing. But the easiest thing would be to fly into DFW and do it in Texas. And the thing about Texas is you're much more likely to not have a cloud full of skies there. A sky full of clouds there, rather. And so we should definitely find a place and just say we're going to be out here at mile marker 42 or whatever, and if you're there, you're there, and if you're not, then you're not. You get the idea. Anyway, thanks again to the members for making this possible. Thanks for everybody for being here. I'll tell you one thing. I cannot imagine missing an eclipse because of clouds. That would break my heart. But we're going. We'll be there, so we'll see. DFW is nice because apparently they've got some flights that go into DFW. But I better start booking them because I imagine I'm not going to be the only person with that idea. I think the totality goes right over Dallas, doesn't it? Go right through Dallas, total eclipse. I do not want to be in a city. I want to get there 2 days before, and I want to get north. And if it turns, and by the way, and I want to be in a car so that we can look at this thing, and if it looks like we're going to have clouds, we're just going to drive until we get out of the clouds. We're going to be looking at this like it's a space launch. Anyway, it was a real fun night tonight, guys. Thanks to everybody. It was really fun, and thanks for that question about the 80s. That was a nice way to back out of a show that started out as kind of a drag. So for those of you watching on YouTube, this is your time to say goodnight to all our company. And we'll see you guys here on Thursday for the Stratosphere Lounge. Hey, hooray. Thanks. See you later. Bye.
You. Yes, you. Do you dread waking up in the morning? Are you feeling helpless in your society? Perhaps even a bit lost? Well, look no further. At the Capitol, we offer an escape, a new beginning, a lifetime of unending joy. We have an abundance of attractions so captivating, you'll wonder how you ever lived without them. Let's take a look, shall we? Take a ride on the Cosmic Carnival. Let go of decisions and let the carnival choose each thrill for you. Simply sit back and soak in fun. Getting hungry? Make your way to Brightside Bistro, where you can feast until your heart's content. And if that's not enough to satisfy your craving, choose from our exquisite line of automatons, a companion that never strays, never tires, and always obeys. As you traverse our radiant metropolis, bring our latest gizmo, the mood on the go. With the swipe of a thumb, alter your mood instantly and experience any emotion you wish. You can also use it to instantaneously replace your companion if things go south. How convenient. And our most popular attraction, the Dream Machine. Relive your most cherished moments in vivid, extraordinary detail. No need to cling to old photos.
I love you.
Live in the past forever. You might be wondering, what's the cost for such a paradise? Well, dear viewer, some prices aren't paid in gold or silver. We only ask you for one thing. Your identity. We'll need the very core of who you are. It's a small price for a lifetime of unending joy, don't you think? And no need to fear crime or violence. We'll always keep an eye on you. For your safety. Welcome back to Spot the Odd One Out. Remember, in the Capitol, wearing a smile is the norm. However, a few seem to occasionally slip up. No worries. This is your golden opportunity. If you see someone forgetting their grin, report them to us and stand a chance to win fabulous rewards. We'll make sure to turn their frown upside down.